In this compilation video of the world of Norse mythology, you will see the creatures, gods, legendary weapons, kingdoms, stories, and myths that I have published over the years. Some of the most interesting characters in Norse mythology are not powerful gods, but rather the creatures that constantly appear to challenge the gods and terrify men. Norse mythology, including the stories of Odin, Thor, and Loki, was the basis of the religion of the Viking warriors who plundered Europe from the 8th to the 11th centuries. The religion went into decline about 1,000 years ago when Christianity spread across northern Europe. But Norse mythology, with its captivating stories, terrifying characters, and monsters, never really lost its foothold in Scandinavian thought and has greatly influenced contemporary literature, television, and gaming. In this video, we will learn about the creatures and monsters from Norse mythology that terrorized Europe for centuries. 1. Draugr. The Draugr are the undead from Norse mythology. Although some stories describe them as blood-drinking creatures, they are more like zombies than vampires. The Draugr possess superhuman strength and can increase in size at will, but they cannot shake the unmistakable stench of decay and have the hideous visage of a corpse. The Draugr creature often lives in their graves to defend the treasure they were buried with, but they have also been known to enter communities to wreak havoc on the living, often tormenting those who wronged them in life. They can kill by crushing someone with their superior strength, eating their meat, eating them whole in their enlarged state, or kill indirectly by driving a person insane. These creatures were said to be able to enter the dreams of the living to torment them, always leaving behind a gift to show the victim that the encounter was real. Draugr can be killed and suffer a second death if their bodies decompose too much, or if they are burned, dismembered, or destroyed. Evil, greedy, or unpopular people were believed to be more likely to become Draugr after death. 2. Dwarfs. They are small, misshapen creatures that originated as maggots from the corpse of Ymir, the first of the Norse giants, and endowed with reason by the gods of Asgard. They lived underground in a place called Svartalfheim, which was thought to be a maze of mines and forges. They are said to have made the greatest weapons and jewelry, including Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, Gungnir, Odin's spear, and Thor's wife's long golden hair. In some myths, dwarf creatures are depicted turning to stone if exposed to sunlight. For example, a dwarf named Alvis is said to have claimed the hand of Thor's daughter in marriage, but was tricked into speaking until dawn, when he was struck by sunlight and turned to stone. 3. Elves. There are two different types of elves in Norse mythology: the Dökkvalfar, or dark elf creatures, and the Ljósálfar, light elf creatures. Dark elves are believed to be the same as dwarves and dwell underground, and are almost black to the eye. The light elves, on the other hand, were described as more beautiful to behold than the sun. The light elves were often considered to be much like the gods of the Aesir and Vanir, with the Vanir god Freyr being the lord of the elven homeland of Alfheim. Elves are generally described as having ambivalent relationships with humans. Both could cause human disease and had the power to heal. Humans and elves were thought to occasionally interbreed to produce children that looked human but possessed extraordinary intuitive and magical powers. 4. Fenrir. Fenrir was the most famous of many wolf creatures mentioned in Norse mythology. He was the son of the god Loki and the giant Angrboda. The gods of Asgard raised Fenrir to prevent him from wreaking havoc on the 9 worlds, but he grew quickly and caused so much trouble that they decided to put him in chains. The gods convinced Fenrir to let them chain him by pretending they were playing a game to see how strong he was. Fenrir easily broke all ties. Eventually, the gods ordered the dwarves to make a special chain, which was stronger than any known, yet seemed light. Fenrir was suspicious of this chain and demanded that one of the gods put his hand to his mouth while being chained as a sign of good faith. The god Tyr agreed to this, even though he knew he would lose his hand. When Fenrir realized that he had been tricked, he took Tyr's hand. Meanwhile, the gods chained him to a rock and placed a sword in his jaws to keep them open. The resulting slime formed a foamy river called Expectation. The ominous name of the river Expectation seems to be a reference to Ragnarok, the end of the world in Norse mythology, when Fenrir will break his chains and take revenge. Fenrir is also said to be the father of Skoll and Hati, other dire wolves who chase the sun and moon respectively. It is also said that when Ragnarok arrives, he will finally catch his targets to devour. 5. Fossagrim. The Fossagrim, also known simply as the Shadowed One, is a water spirit who plays enchanting music on the violin. Usually depicted as a handsome man, half naked or nude, the Fossagrim is a tale of good guys and bad guys. He plays the violin with incredible talent, imitating the sounds of the forest, the wind, and the water. For one, Fossagrim has sometimes been known to teach humans to play the violin as well as he does, but only if they sacrifice a goat. If the goat is too skinny, Fossagrim will only teach how to tune the violin, but a sufficiently prepared goat will be a lesson until the player's fingers bleed, at which point he will be able to play well enough to make the trees of the forest dance. On the other hand, he lures women and children into lakes and streams where they drown, which is pretty harsh. But like in all parts of mythology, where good things happen, death is often near. 6. Huldra. The Huldra are guardians of the forest, part of a group of Ra who protect several different places. Huldra females are always described as incredibly beautiful and alluring, but with the long tail of a cow and a bark-covered back. Huldra can disguise themselves as young women to walk in the world of men. The power of his illusion is only broken if someone sees his tail. They visit communities to lure unmarried young men into the forest where they are kept as slaves, lovers, or sometimes killed by Huldra. If one of her victims is released or escapes, she will live forever without the temptation to return to her captor. 7. Jormungandr. Also known as the Midgard serpent, the Jormungandr is another of Loki and Angerboda's children. It is a serpent or dragon that lives in the sea that surrounds Midgard, the visible world of humans. It is said that Odin threw him into the water so that he would not get into trouble. But this creature grew so large that he was able to encircle all of Midgard and grab hold of his own tail. He is described as an enemy of Thor. In one story, Thor was fishing with the giant Hymir, but not satisfied with the whales Hymir caught at his favorite fishing spots. Thor insists on going further out to sea, where he catches Jormungandr with his hook. He pulls the snake out of the water and they come face to face, with Jormungandr dripping with venom and blood. Hymir is so shocked by the scene that he cuts the fishing line before Thor can kill the serpent with his hammer, and the serpent returns to the sea. It is also said that Thor and Jormungandr are destined to kill each other during Ragnarok, when the serpent will rise from the sea and poison the ocean and sky. 8. Jotnar. The Jotnar are the giants of Norse mythology, and are described as having powers that rival those of the gods. Rather than referring to its size, the name Jotnar means devourers. They are enemies of the gods, and just as the Asgardian gods represent order, the Jotnar embody chaos. However, many of the Asgardian gods are descended from the Jotnar. Odin is half Jotnar and Thor, 3/4 Jotnar. The Asgardian gods seek not to kill the Jotnar, but to keep them at bay, so that the universe stays in balance. The role of balance in the universe is reflected in the Norse creation myth, in which the gods build the cosmos from the corpse of the slain Jotnar Ymir. 9. Kraken. The Kraken are aquatic monsters that are said to inhabit the coasts of Norway and Greenland. They are often depicted as giant octopuses or squids, and some stories suggest they were so large that their bodies could be mistaken for an island. If men were drawn to the island, it would sink when they set foot on it, killing them and leaving them as food for the Kraken. When it rose to the surface, it was believed to cause large eddies that would help it attack ships. Lurking in the deep waters, the Kraken rises when disturbed by ships. When the sailors see its sheer size, they head towards it, believing it to be the shore, only to be swept under to their doom. The Kraken may be inspired by the existence of the giant squid, which, at 18 m long, is a true monster of the waters. Fortunately, however, human beings rarely see the real thing. The Kraken ate mainly fish. Their excrement was so thick and smelled so strongly of fish that it would attract many other fish to the area for the Kraken to devour. 10. Mare. One of the most fearsome creatures in Norse mythology was Mare. This monster could give people nightmares and would sit on them while they slept. It was a common belief that Mare was the soul of a living being that left a person's body like demons would, so that they could torture the innocent at night. Often these were witches, whose souls took the form of animals, but normal people, particularly teenagers, were also thought to become Mare when their spirits wandered. The idea that the soul wandered at night was a common phenomenon. Odin's soul wandered so often that he worried that one day it would not return to his body. It was also believed that when Mare touched a living thing, people, cattle, or trees, she would cause her hair to become tangled. This was probably used to explain the phenomenon of the Polish braid, which is a disease of the hair. It was also said that it was for this reason that the branches and roots of some trees became entangled. 11. Norns. Norns are female beings and creatures who create and control fate, including the fate of the gods. They appeared at each birth to weave the thread of destiny by casting lots of wood, weaving a piece of cloth, or carving symbols in wood. The Norse seem to have believed that fate was blind and unforgiving, and there is no evidence that anyone charged the Norns to change their fate. The three main Norns also served as caretakers of the Tree of Life that contains the 9 worlds of Norse mythology. His care only delays the death of the tree, since a cornerstone of Norse myth is that all things eventually come to an end. All existence will end with Ragnarok. 12. Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr, drill tooth or perforation tooth, is a squirrel that runs up and down Yggdrasil, the world tree, carrying messages between the eagle Vedrfolnir, who perches on Yggdrasil, and the serpent Nidhogger, who lives under one of the 3 roots of the tree. Most theories believe that this is to stir up hostilities between the two, spreading slander and gossip. In turn, the two attack the tree, leading to a cycle of decay and rebirth that refreshes the tree. However, he is mischievous and enjoys stirring up trouble between the wise eagle that sits on the top of the tree and the hungry dragon that dwells in its roots. In some stories, he is described as having the more sinister motive of convincing the two adversaries to use their powers to destroy the tree. 13. Sleipnir. Sleipnir was Odin's horse. He had 8 legs, so he could have 1 leg in each of the Norse worlds. Loki is actually the mother of Sleipnir. Loki was transformed into a mare and was impregnated by the stallion of a giant that Loki was trying to trick. He is described as the best horse and is sometimes ridden to reach Hell itself, the realm of death. 14. Trolls. 2 different types of trolls are found in Norse myths. There are big, ugly trolls that live in forests and mountains, and small, gnome-like trolls that live underground in deep caves and caverns. They are generally portrayed as unintelligent and rather malevolent, but can show kindness in exchange for a favor. Trolls were thought to be responsible for the many rocks that cover the Scandinavian countryside. Some were used by them as weapons. Others are trolls turned to stone by the sun. 15. Valkyries. The Valkyries were female spirits in the service of the god Odin. They were graceful and noble maidens who carried dead heroes to Valhalla, the heavenly home of Odin's fallen army, while they awaited Ragnarok. It is true that the Valkyries carried the dead into battle, but their name, Selectors of the Dead, hints at their darker side. They don't just choose who enters Valhalla, they also choose who lives and dies in battle, using malicious magic to secure your preferences. Nordic mythology has monsters and creatures that even the gods themselves fear because of their incredible strength and power. Others can be benevolent, and even the best of companions, beings that offered an explanation of everyday life in the beliefs of the ancient Norse. Number 1. Mimir. The name Mimir is often translated as the one who remembers, which already gives a clue to his role as a keeper of knowledge and wisdom. He is best known for his role in the war between the Aesir and the Vanir, 2 tribes of gods in Norse mythology. At the end of this war, both sides agreed to exchange hostages as a token of goodwill and to seal their peace. Mimir was sent by the Aesir to the Vanir along with another god, Hoenir. While Hoenir was seen as a leader and a great advisor, in reality, he relied heavily on Mimir's advice. When the Vanir discovered that Hoenir was unable to offer wisdom without Mimir at his side, they felt betrayed. As a result, they beheaded Mimir and sent his head back to the Aesir as a warning. After receiving Mimir's decapitated head, Odin, the main god of the Norse pantheon, decided not to let all that knowledge go to waste. Odin performed magical rituals and embalmed Mimir's head to preserve it. Once reanimated, Mimir's head offered Odin advice and wisdom. Mimir, even in the form of a talking head, became one of Odin's most valuable advisors, offering him wisdom and insights from the depths of knowledge. There is a sacred well called Mimisbrunner, or the Well of Mimir, which is located at one of the 3 roots of the Yggdrasil, the world tree that connects all the realms in Norse cosmology. This well is said to contain wisdom and knowledge. Odin, in his endless search for wisdom, approached the well. However, Mimir, guardian of the well, asked a price for drinking from its waters. Odin paid the price by sacrificing one of his eyes, which was then thrown into the well. In return, he was able to drink and gain immense wisdom. Number 2. Audumbla. After the formation of the primordial world of ice and fire, Audumbla emerged from the melted drops. Along with her, the first giant being, Ymir, also came into existence. Ymir fed on Audumla's milk, while the cosmic cow was nourished by licking the salty ice blocks of the primordial world. As Audumbla licked the ice blocks, on the third day of doing so, he unveiled a fully formed human being. This being was Buri, the first god and ancestor of the Aesir family, the main pantheon of gods in Norse mythology. Buri had a son named Bor, who in turn was the father of Odin, Vili, and Ve, the gods who would later create the world as we know it, and who would play central roles in many other Norse myths. Number 3. Hugin and Munin. Hugin and Munin are two ravens that play an essential role in Norse mythology, specifically in relation to Odin. Hugin comes from Old Norse and means thought. Munin also comes from Old Norse and means memory or mind. Hugin and Munin are faithful companions of Odin, the father of all. They perch on his shoulders and are his eyes and ears in the world. Each day at dawn, Odin sends Hugin and Munin flying around the world to observe events, and then they return at dusk to whisper to him all that they have seen and heard. Ravens are seen as symbols of wisdom and knowledge, something Odin values greatly. The nature of Hugin and Munin, representing thought and memory respectively, underscores Odin's constant search for wisdom and his desire to understand and remember all that occurs in the world. Odin's dependence on these ravens also reflects the ephemeral nature of knowledge and memory. In certain texts, it is mentioned that Odin fears the loss of Munin, memory, more than that of Hugin, thought. Number 4. Berserkers. Berserkers are a fascinating figure in Norse mythology and sagas. Although they are also intertwined with the history and actual warfare practices of the Vikings, here I will focus exclusively on the mythological aspect. The word berserker probably derives from berserker, which in Old Norse means bear shirt. This suggests that these warriors wore bearskins. Another theory holds that it could come from bearsark, meaning shirtless or without armor. According to the sagas, it was believed that berserkers could transform or take on the characteristics of certain animals, especially bears and wolves. This transformation was not necessarily physical, but manifested in their fury and abilities in battle. Warriors who took on the spirit of the wolf were sometimes called Ulfednar, werewolves. Berserkers had a special relationship with the god Odin. They were believed to be warriors chosen by the god, and in many sagas they are described as followers or even direct descendants of Odin. The frenzied and ecstatic nature of berserkers in battle was seen as a manifestation of Odin-inspired rage. One of the most famous characteristics of berserkers was their ability to enter a state of extreme fury in battle, known as Berserkergang. In this state, they were incredibly fierce and seemed to be immune to pain and fear. It was said that during this trance, they did not distinguish between friend and foe and could harm their own allies. It is suggested in the sagas that berserkers may have engaged in specific rituals before battle to induce the rage state. These rituals might have included the consumption of certain substances, dances, chants, or invocations to the gods. Number 5. Garmr. Garm is often described as the guardian of Hell, the realm of the dead. He is said to be bound in front of the cave Niflheim, and there he performs his watchful duty, similar to the function of the canine Cerberus in Greek mythology, who guards the gates of Hades. During Ragnarok, Garm is freed from his bonds and faces Tyr, one of the bravest warrior gods of the Aesir, in battle. Both Garm and Tyr kill each other during this confrontation. It is important not to confuse Garm with Fenrir, another wolf of great significance in Norse mythology. While Garm guards the gates of Hell, Fenrir is known to be one of Loki's sons and has a more direct role in Ragnarok, where he is prophesied to devour Odin. Number 6. Hraesvelgr. His role in Norse mythology is relatively limited, and not as thoroughly developed as other characters or creatures. Hraesvelgr is described as a giant who takes the form of an eagle. He sits at the ends of the world, on the edge of the sky. One of his most distinctive characteristics is that, according to sources, when he flaps his wings, he creates the wind that blows over the worlds. In this way, he is responsible for the winds in Norse cosmology. Number 7. Geri and Freki. Geri and Freki are two wolves that have a prominent role in Norse mythology, closely associated with Odin. Like Hugin and Munin, Odin's ravens, Geri and Freki are close companions of the god. They are almost always at his side, especially on Odin's throne in Asgard, the abode of the gods. There is an interesting contrast here. While Hugin and Munin represent aspects of Odin's mind, thought and memory, Geri and Freki can be seen as representing a more physical or primordial aspect, in line with the wild and predatory nature of the wolves. Number 8. Surtur is the leader and most powerful among the fire giants that reside in Muspelheim, one of the 9 worlds in Norse cosmology. Muspelheim is the realm of heat, flame, and light. Surtur plays a crucial role in Ragnarok. According to prophecy, he will march against the gods at the end of time with his flaming sword, which will shine brighter than the sun. During Ragnarok, Surtur is said to fight the god Freyr, who will not have his magic sword because he gave it away in exchange for love.
I did it for love.
The battle will culminate in Freyr's death, marking one of the many tragedies of this cataclysmic event. After the battle, Surtur will spew fire across the world, consuming and purifying the burning earth, leading to the destruction and eventual rebirth of the world. Surtur's sword is often highlighted in mythological sources due to its destructive power and brilliance. During Ragnarok, its radiance is described as surpassing that of the sun. Number 9. Lindworms. Lindworm are generally depicted as long, elongated snakes or dragons, often wingless. In some depictions, they may have a pair of front legs, but lack hind legs. Their bodies are sinuous and resemble those of giant snakes. While they are found in the mythology and folklore of several European cultures, they are particularly prominent in Scandinavian traditions. They are often associated with evil or danger. They are known to terrorize populations, demand sacrifices, or guard treasures. There are tales in which Lindworm are the result of a curse or spell. In some stories, these beings may be transformations of people, often as a result of an act of evil or some kind of hex. Number 10. Eagle of Yggdrasil. In Norse mythology, the eagle has no specific name, but is described as a great eagle that resides at the top of the world tree, Yggdrasil. It is one of several creatures that inhabit the cosmic tree, and each has its own significance and function within Norse cosmology. The eagle resides in the upper branches of Yggdrasil, near the heavens. Its opposite position is that of the dragon Nidhogger, who gnaws at the roots of the tree in the lower realm in Niflheim. Ratatoskr, the squirrel that runs up and down Yggdrasil, acts as a messenger or instigator between the eagle at the top and Nidhogger at the base. According to the sagas, Ratatoskr carries insults between the two, fomenting enmity between the eagle and the dragon. Number 11. Gullinbursti. Gullinbursti was created by the dwarves Brock and Sindri as part of a wager with the trickster god Loki. He has the ability to run faster than any horse, even through water or air. This is impressive, considering the importance and speed of horses in Norse mythology. His golden hair glows in the dark, lighting the way for his rider. This characteristic makes him invaluable in the dark of night or in shadowy regions. Gullinbursti was given to Freyr, the god of fertility, rain, and sun. Freyr is one of the main deities in Norse mythology, and the boar is one of his most distinctive attributes. Gullinbursti symbolizes power, wealth, and fertility, all characteristics associated with Freyr. Number 12. Skoll and Hati. Skoll chases the sun, the goddess Sunna, across the sky with the intention of devouring her. Hati pursues Mani, the moon god, for the same purpose. Skoll and Hati are said to be descendants of Fenrir, the monstrous wolf son of Loki. It is prophesied that during Ragnarok, both wolves will finally succeed in their hunt. Skoll will devour the sun, and Hati will devour the moon. This act will symbolize the darkness and chaos that will envelop the world during this cataclysm. Number 13. Disir. The Disir are, in general, supernatural female forces. They can be either benevolent or malevolent depending on the circumstances. They are often invoked for protection, especially during birth, death, and battle. They can also be honored to ensure a fruitful year in terms of harvest and well-being. Some interpretations associate the Disir with the Norns, the 3 female deities of destiny in Norse mythology. However, while the Norns are a specific trinity that determines the destiny of beings, the Disir represent a broader and less well-defined group of spirits or deities. Number 14. Eikthrunir. Eikthrnir is a stag or reindeer that resides in Valhalla, where fallen warriors known as Einherjar are welcomed. He sits on the roof of Valhalla and chews the branches of the Laradar tree. It is not directly specified, but some believe that this tree could be a manifestation of or a reference to the world tree, Yggdrasil. From its horns drips dew, which then becomes the rivers of the world. This characteristic makes it an essential figure for the water cycle in the Norse cosmos. This constant generation of water from his body reinforces the interconnectedness of all beings and elements in Norse cosmology. Eikthrnir is mentioned in texts such as the poetic Edda, particularly in the poem Grimnismal, where his position in Valhalla is described and how dew flows from his horns to form the rivers. Number 15. Heidrun. Heidrun is a goat in Norse mythology, which like the deer consumes tree foliage and produces mead for the Einherjar. She is described in the poetic Edda and in the prose Edda. Heidrun resides in Valhalla, in the great hall of the fallen warriors. The amazing thing about Heidrun is that, instead of milk, he produces an endless and divine mead that fills a great bowl in Valhalla. This mead is what the Einherjar drink. Number 16. Fylgja. A Fylgja is a guardian or protective spirit that is associated with a person, or sometimes an entire family or clan. These spirits are linked to the person's destiny, and are often considered to be born and die with them. They usually appear in the form of animals, especially in dreams or visions. The type of animal could reflect the nature or character of the person to whom the spirit is linked. For example, a leader or warrior might have a Fylgja in the form of a wolf or bear, while someone of a calmer nature might have a deer or bird. In some sagas and tales, these spirits may also appear in human form, especially as women. These manifestations are usually ancestors or mother figures associated with the person or family. Often, seeing a person's Fylgja, especially in unusual circumstances, can be an omen of death or some other important event. If a person saw his or her own Fylgja while awake, this was generally considered a bad omen. Number 17. Saehrimnir. Saehrimnir is a creature within Norse mythology that plays a unique role in the daily cycle of Valhalla, the great hall where fallen warriors reside. Saehrimnir is an animal, often described as a boar or some form of beast, although its exact nature is not always specifically detailed in primary sources. Each day in Valhalla, it is slaughtered and cooked by the cook of the gods, Andrimnir. Then, his flesh is served to the Einherjar, the fallen warriors who reside in Valhalla. The Einherjar feast on the meat as part of their daily feast, accompanied by mead from the Heidrun goat. What makes this boar special, however, is its regenerative capacity. After being cooked and consumed, the next day, it comes back to life, ready to be slaughtered and cooked again in a never-ending cycle. Before I introduce you to the last member of our list, I would like to remind you that we have a special feature, channel membership. This option is one of the best ways to help us keep this space alive, allowing us to offer you at least 2 videos every week. Creating this content requires considerable effort, and relying solely on views and advertising can be tricky. So if you are interested, and of course, if your situation allows it, I invite you to join as a member. This is an excellent opportunity not only to support us, but also to integrate you more actively in our community, participating in the selection of topics and in the planning of future videos. I deeply appreciate your attention and support. And now, without further delay, we continue. Number 18. Svartalfheim. Svartalfheim is a famous horse in Norse mythology, known mainly for his role in the story related to the construction of the walls of Asgard, the abode of the gods. After the end of the war between the Aesir and the Vanir, the gods decided to build a wall around Asgard to protect themselves from giants and other threats.
Welcome.
A builder offered to build the wall in 3 winters in exchange for the goddess Freyja, the sun, and the moon. The builder had an amazing helper, his horse, Svartalfheim, which possessed supernatural strength and stamina. The horse was so powerful that progress on the wall advanced rapidly, and it seemed that the builder would accomplish his task on time. Realizing that the builder would be able to complete the wall in time, and that the gods would therefore have to deliver Freyja and the stars, the gods demanded that Loki find a solution, for it was he who suggested accepting the builder's offer in the first place. Loki, in one of his trademark tricks, transformed himself into a mare to seduce and distract Svartalfheim. Without the help of his invaluable horse, the builder was unable to complete the wall in time. Eventually, the builder was revealed to be a giant and was defeated by Thor. Due to the encounter between Loki in mare form and Svartalfheim, Loki gave birth to a son, an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir. Sleipnir is considered the fastest horse and is Odin's steed. Now let's look at their gods, starting with Odin, to whom I dedicated a whole video. Odin, Lord of the Aesir, whose only eye contemplates the mysteries of the universe, custodian of wisdom and guide of warriors. He reigns from his throne in Asgard. His ravens whisper the secrets of the world, and his will shapes the destiny of gods and mortals. In this video, I'm going to summarize the story of Odin, the almighty father of all. Ginnungagap. It is the primordial void, the cosmic crack where everything began and from where the universe emerged. In the earliest beginnings, before time and space as we know them existed, there was an abyss. It was not simply a void, but a place full of latent energy and possibility. On one side was fiery Muspelheim, the land of fire, and on the other, icy Niflheim, the land of ice and fog. Ginnungagap was the border between these two extreme and opposite kingdoms. In this formless place, the ice of Niflheim met the heat of Muspelheim. Sparks flew and ice melted, and in this chaotic and creative dance, the primordial giant Ymir, the ancestor of all giants, emerged. Ymir was the first living being and the ancestor of the frost giants, called Jotuns. He fed on the milk of Audhumla, who in turn fed by licking the frozen rocks, thus revealing Buri, the first god, grandfather of Odin. Buri had a son named Bor, who later married Bestla, a giantess, daughter of the frost giants. From their union, Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve were born. Odin and his two brothers were upset by the fact that the giants outnumbered the Aesir, as they constantly conceived new giants. They made the decision to kill Ymir, an act that was both violent and necessary for the creation of the world. When Ymir was slain, his blood overflowed in a flood so immense that it drowned all the giants except one, Bergelmir, who escaped on a ship with his wife. In this way, the race of giants was guaranteed to continue. The three brothers dragged Ymir's lifeless body towards the center of Ginnungagap. This is the place where they created the world from Ymir's remains. Ymir's body became the raw material for the creation of the universe. His blood formed the oceans, his flesh, the earth, his bones, the mountains, his brain, the clouds, and his skull, the sky. The worms that lived in his body transformed into dwarfs, and the three brothers placed 4 of them in the corners of the world to hold up the sky. Odin's family in Norse mythology is complex and diverse, and his descendants include powerful and significant figures. Thor, son of Odin and Jord, the very embodiment of Earth, is an indomitable force in the Norse pantheon. With his hammer Mjolnir, forged in the bowels of the earth and charged with the power of thunder, Thor is the guardian and protector of the gods and humanity. Vidar, born to Odin and the giantess Gridr, is a solitary and enigmatic figure. His destiny is to fulfill a transcendental revenge. He plays a crucial role in Ragnarok, as we will see later. Balder, the god of beauty and goodness, is the personification of the pure and noble. Son of Odin and Frigg, his invulnerability was challenged only by mistletoe. Loki's machination, which led his blind brother Hoder to kill him, not only represented an immeasurable loss, but was a dark harbinger of Ragnarok, the end of days. Vali, son of Odin and Princess Rindr, was conceived with a singular purpose: to avenge Balder's death. His life and his mission were intertwined with tragedy and revenge, and he fulfilled his destiny by killing his blind brother. Hoder, another son of Odin and Frigg, is a tragic figure in Norse mythology. Deceived by Loki, he became the unwitting instrument of the death of his brother Balder. His fate was sealed by an act he did not fully understand, and his life is a reminder of the fragility and complexity of destiny. Loki was an adopted son of Odin. Loki is an ambiguous and complex figure. Neither completely god nor completely giant, Loki is a being of contradictions and transformations. He is the god of cunning, deceit, and mischief, but also a vital and dynamic character who defies norms and expectations. Frigg is Odin's primary wife, and the mother of some of his most famous children. As a goddess of prophecy and wisdom, she shares many characteristics with her husband, including the ability to see fate. Although she was unable to prevent Baldur's death, she plays a central role in the life of the god's family and is one of the most revered goddesses in Norse tradition. In the figure of Odin, we see the representation of a god who is neither omniscient nor omnipotent, but a being in a constant search, willing to pay any price for knowledge and power. Mimir is a wise being who guards a well located at the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. This well contains wisdom and knowledge, and drinking from its waters grants understanding and insight beyond the human. Odin, in his relentless pursuit of knowledge and power, was drawn to the waters of Mimir's well. He wanted to delve deeper into the mysteries of the cosmos and understand the secrets that governed destiny and the world. Mimir, realizing the magnitude of what Odin sought, demanded a high price. He asked Odin to sacrifice one of his eyes and throw it into the well as payment for a drink of its waters. The eye, in many cultures, symbolizes vision and perception, both in a literal and metaphorical sense. Odin understood the gravity of the sacrifice and accepted the price. He tore out his own eye and threw it into the well, then drank of the waters of Mimir. The sacrifice of his eye granted Odin deep insight into the mysteries of the world and destiny, and granted him wisdom beyond the understanding of gods and men. But this was not enough. Odin wanted to know the secret of the runes, magical symbols that contain and represent the fundamental forces of the universe. The runes were not simply an alphabet, but were also used in magic and divination, and understood the essence of things. To obtain this knowledge, Odin performed a ritual of self-sacrifice. He hung himself from a branch of the world tree, Yggdrasil, and wounded himself with its spear, Gungnir. He spent 9 days and 9 nights in this agony, without food or water, in a state between life and death. During his prayer and sacrifice, Odin entered a state of mystical ecstasy. In that trance, the secrets of the runes were revealed to him. He saw how symbols contained the knowledge of destiny, of creation and destruction, of life and death. When he finally descended from Yggdrasil, Odin had not only gained the knowledge of runes, but had also gained the power to manipulate fate and the world through them. He became a master of runic magic, with the ability to heal, kill, subjugate, and liberate. Odin, as god of the dead and lord of Valhalla, plays a crucial role in Norse mythology, especially when it comes to warriors and battle. Valhalla is one of the most famous halls in Asgard. It is a majestic and vast place, with roofs made of shields and walls of spears. Here, warriors fallen in battle, known as Einherjar, are carried by the Valkyries, warrior maidens in the service of Odin. Within Valhalla, the Einherjar enjoy a life of constant combat and endless feasting. During the day, they fight each other, practicing and perfecting their skills. As night falls, their wounds heal, and they enjoy a banquet where meat and mead flow freely. All of this is a preparation for Ragnarok, the final battle in which everyone will fight against the giants and forces of chaos. Odin needs strong and brave warriors for this battle, and Valhalla is where they gather and prepare. Odin's search for brave and capable warriors led to the belief that he influenced human battles. It is said that he would sometimes intervene to ensure that the best and bravest fighters were defeated in battle, so that they could unite in Valhalla. For some, this could be seen as a blessing. To be chosen by Odin and taken by the Valkyries to Valhalla was an honor and a recognition of bravery and skill.
This hero that comes into Valhalla does not lament his death. I shall not enter Odin's hall with fear.
For others, the idea that Odin could influence the course of human battles might be more disturbing, suggesting that the lives and deaths of warriors were subject to the needs and desires of the gods. Odin's connection to death and war goes beyond simply venerating skill in battle. He represents a deeper understanding of death, honor, and destiny in Norse culture. Death in battle was not simply an end. It was a beginning, a transition to a new existence where bravery and skill were eternally valued and perfected. one of the poetic Eddas describing Norse myths. Ragnarok is prophesied by a seer or volva who reveals the fate of the gods to Odin. Ragnarok is a series of terrible events, including a great battle, earthquakes, natural disasters, and the flooding of the world. During Ragnarok, the gods, the Einherjar, and various mythical beings will fight against the giants, the wolf Fenrir, the fire demon Surtur, and other forces of chaos. One of the most dramatic and tragic encounters of Ragnarok will be the battle between Odin and Fenrir, the monstrous and ferocious wolf. Fenrir is one of Loki's sons, and from his birth, the gods knew that he would play a crucial role in destroying him. Odin will face Fenrir in a desperate fight, but the prophecy has already dictated his fate. Fenrir will swallow Odin, killing the god who was once the wisest and most powerful of all. Odin's death will not be in vain, nor will he remain unavenged. Vidar, one of Odin's sons, will fulfill his destiny in avenging his father. Equipped with special footwear made from the remains of leather that humans have discarded throughout the ages, and endowed with immense strength, Vidar will face Fenrir. In a symbolic and visceral representation of revenge, Vidar will open the jaws of Fenrir and kill him, thus avenging the death of his father. Vidar's action symbolizes not only revenge but also continuity and renewal. The death of Odin and the revenge of Vidar are parts of a series of tragic and heroic events that will culminate in the renewal of the world. After Ragnarok, a new world will rise from the ashes of the old, and some gods and humans will survive to start anew. 1. Freyr. Freyr of the Vanir tribe was a Norse god of peace and prosperity. Among other things, he was associated with masculine virility, the sun, and fair weather. Freyr, often depicted with a huge phallus, was worshipped throughout Scandinavia, particularly Sweden, where he was celebrated at weddings and harvest festivals. Along with his twin sister Freya, Freyr was among the foremost Vanir deities. A man of many magical possessions, Freyr commanded Skidbladnir, a ship forged in the furnaces of Svartalfheim by the dwarf craftsmen Brokkr and Sindri. Freyr was also accompanied by another of Brokkr and Sindri's creations, the mechanical Gullinbursti boar. The boar had a golden mane and bristles that glowed in the deepest gloom. Finally, Freyr wielded a sword that had the ability to fight on its own. The loss of this weapon would ultimately contribute to his demise during Ragnarok. Freyr ruled over Alfheim, a kingdom of the Light Elves. Like Freyr, the Light Elves were known for their peace and goodness. 2. Loki. The great trickster god of the Norse pantheon, Loki was a devious deity known for his many schemes and deceptions. A shapeshifter, Loki's transformations were as varied as the motives for his pranks, which included wealth, women, wisdom, or just pure pleasure. At various times he took the form of a salmon, a flea, a fly, and a mare. With Loki, appearances were never what they seemed. While his antics frequently got the gods into sticky situations, his tricks often rescued them from hard times as well. Where Thor, Freya, and even Odin strove to enforce a just order among the gods, Loki's erratic behavior called into question the very nature of his loyalties. Loki married the goddess Sigyn, about whom little is known except that by Loki he had a son named Nari, or Narfi. Loki also bred with his lover Angerboda, a Jotun, possibly a troll, who gave birth to 3 children: Hel, who ruled the eponymous underworld called Hel, Jormungandr, the Midgard sea serpent, and Thor's archenemy, and Fenrir, the huge wolf destined to kill Odin during Ragnarok. 3. Nerthus. Worshipped in Scandinavia and the Germanic territories, Nerthus was a dark goddess associated with peace and prosperity. She was related to Njord, the Norse god of the sea, although whether they were consorts or separate incarnations of the same deity is unclear. Known as the bringer of peace, Nerthus was honored during a ritual wagon procession. During this ceremony, the goddess's priests would drive a chariot covered in her sacred cloth through Germanic villages, causing the inhabitants to lay down their weapons and embrace each other in celebration. While little is known about Nerthus outside of this ritual, she was thought to reside in her sacred grove on an as-yet unidentified island. 4. Thor. A paragon of masculine strength and virility, the storm god Thor was the fiercest of the Norse deities. Among his many abilities, Thor commanded storms and rain and brought lightning and thunder. Due to his prodigious sexual drive and his ability to impregnate women, Thor was also associated with fertility. He wielded a warhammer called Mjolnir, and was thought to have red hair and a red beard. Brave, powerful, and just, Thor fully embodied the hero archetype. Where Odin and Loki prowled and schemed, Thor faced his troubles with hammer in hand and violence in his heart. Whenever a fearsome beast or cunning Jotun threatened his peace, the gods usually called on Thor to intervene. 5. Heimdall. Heimdall the Watcher was a Norse deity of the Aesir tribe, a god of keen eyesight and hearing who was ready to sound the Jallarhorn at the start of Ragnarok. From the little evidence that has survived, Heimdall appears to have been a protector of the deities and a guardian of the passages to and from the 9 realms. Because of his supposed role of granting wisdom and social order, he was also considered the father and protector of human beings. He could see night as if it were day, and could spot a target from 100 leagues away. Furthermore, it was said that his sense of hearing was so acute that he could hear the grass grow and the wool of the sheep sprout. 6. Baldur. Baldur of the Aesir tribe was the most beautiful and beloved of all the gods in the Norse pantheon. Baldur radiated charm and was so physically beautiful that he gave off light. He was also described as the wisest of all the gods. As an arbiter of disputes, he settled disputes between gods and men. Baldur's death as a result of Loki's betrayal was one of the central stories in Norse mythology. Baldur's main attributes were his justice, beauty, and sympathy. He owned a large ship called the Hringhorni, meaning ship with a circle on its stern, which was said to be the largest ship ever built. After Baldur's death, the ship became a huge funeral pyre for his body. 7. Frigg. As the wife of Odin, Frigg was the undisputed queen of the Norse gods. Frigg was often depicted sitting on a throne or in a commanding pose. Frigg lived in Fensalir, a watery realm that probably took the form of a swamp, marsh, or wetland. Frigg had power over many areas of life and was associated with fertility, marriage and the home, love and sexuality, wisdom and prophecy. Frigg was a vulva, or practitioner of the magical art of Seder, and she sought to divine or alter the future through ritual. 8. Tyr. The one-armed god of the Norse pantheon, Tyr was a member of the Aesir tribe who represented war and bloodshed. Somewhat paradoxically, he was also known as a bringer of justice and order. The most detailed description of the god was derived from the Gylfaginning, a book of the prose Edda by the 13th century Icelandic scholar Snorri Sturluson. Tyr's most notable attribute was his missing right hand, or arm, usually depicted as being severed at the wrist or forearm. This missing limb had been eaten by Fenrir, the ravenous giant wolf sired by Loki and the Jotun Angerboda. 9. Njord. The Norse god of wind and waters, Njord was the patron of sailors and fishermen. He also brought wealth to the just and deserving. As patriarch of the Vanir deities, Njord led his tribe against the Aesir gods during the Aesir-Vanir War. If you are interested in knowing more about this war between the Norse gods, leave it to me in the comments below, and we may make a video in the future. He would later join the Aesir as part of a peace deal. Njord was a popular god among the Norse, and sailors in particular. Those who worshipped him did so in the hope of receiving the reward of the seas. In Norway, the center of Njord's cult, locals continued to offer prayers to him well into the 18th century. As befits his status as the god of the wind and the waters and master of the destinies of the fishermen, some scholars maintain that Njord lived on the sea, in a kingdom known as Noatun. 10. Idun. The lovely and charming Idun was a Norse goddess of youth and fertility. Idun had the power to grant eternal youth and prevent old age. Her magical apples imparted the gift of youth to those who ate them. She played a key role in Norse myths, rejuvenating the gods by giving them magical apples that reversed the effects of aging. Whenever the Norse gods began to feel the effects of aging, they turned to her. She carried her apples in a box made of ash called an eski. Along with her fruit, this box served as one of her main symbols. 11. Freya. One of the main deities of the Norse pantheon, the lovely and lovely Freya was a goddess of blessings, love, lust, and fertility. A member of the Vanir tribe of deities, Freya shared her people's penchant for the magical arts of divination. Freya was kinder and nicer than the other Norse deities. Where Thor achieved her goals through aggression, and Odin and Loki resorted to deceit, Freya achieved her ends with the softer persuasions of gifts, beauty, and sex. While Freya used to be selfless and helpful, she had a darker side. Like the male gods, Freya had a taste for blood and fought fiercely in battle. It was said that she claimed the lives of half the warriors killed in battle. Freya was recognized as the archetypal Volva, a practitioner of cider, whose art and ritual could see events before they happened. The Volva could then attempt to alter these events, leading enemies to their doom and sparing friends from impending disaster. In Norse mythology, where gods walk among mortals and legends fade into reality, there are objects of power and mystery that have captured the imagination for millennia. Woven from the very essence of the gods and dwarves who created them, these magical artifacts are as central to these ancient tales as the characters themselves. Please note that Norse mythology is an ancient oral tradition with multiple variations on the stories, and that some of these items may be interpreted differently in different sources. Also, the magical nature of some of these items is not always explicitly detailed in the original sources, so enjoy the video and share it with the people you think might like it. Let's start. Number 1. Dainsleif. In the darkness of Norse mythology, where gods and giants wage war and fates are often sinister and ruthless, few weapons carry as heavy a burden as Dainsleif, the cursed sword. Dainsleif was forged by the dwarves, the only creatures in the Norse universe to possess the ability to create objects of such magnificence and doom. Dwarves, inhabitants of Svartalfheim, the Dark World, were known for their magical abilities and their ability to forge weapons and jewels of untold power. This sword, however, had a darker purpose and a more terrible fate. At first glance, Dainsleif might appear to be a sword like any other, but make no mistake, this weapon harbors a curse like no other. It was said that once a Dainsleif was drawn, she always had to take a life before she could be sheathed again. It was not a sword for empty threats or shows of force. If the blade was drawn, death was certain. But Dainsleif's power did not end there. Every wound inflicted by this sword was beyond healing. Every cut, every puncture, every scratch was a death sentence. This sword did not bring wounds, it brought the end of life. Dainsleif came to be possessed by King Hogni and plays a central role in the story of the conflict between him and King Hedin. In the climactic battle, Hedin pleads with Hogni to stop the fighting. However, Hogni refuses, declaring that the bloody carnage cannot be stopped, for Dainsleif had been drawn and must be sated with the blood of men. Number 2. Mjolnir, the hammer of the gods, a tool of creation and destruction like no other in Norse myths. This is not just any weapon, but an extension of the power of Thor, the god of thunder, and is synonymous with his own presence and fury. The story of Mjolnir is as extraordinary as that of Thor himself. It was forged by the dwarves Brokkr and Sindri, two crafting brothers whose skills were unmatched. They accepted the challenge of Loki, the god of deceit, to create gifts for the gods that would exceed those the elves had made. Sindri, using his magical furnace, produced 3 wondrous artifacts: the Gullinbursti gold boar, the Draupnir bracelet, and finally, Mjolnir. But creating him was not easy. Loki, in an attempt to make the brothers lose the bet, transformed into a mosquito and bit Brokkr while he was pumping the bellows on the furnace. But Brokkr held on, and though the hammer's shaft proved shorter than intended due to Loki's interference, Mjolnir's power was unaffected. Mjolnir was a tool of divine justice, capable of destroying mountains and annihilating the enemies of the gods. But despite its destructive power, it also had a creative and protective role. Thor used Mjolnir to bless marriages, births, and paradoxically, to raise the dead. This hammer was not a mere extension of Thor's arm, but a manifestation of his power and authority. It was said that when Thor cast Mjolnir, it always returned to his hand, a ceaseless cycle of destruction and renewal. Furthermore, only those who were worthy could lift Mjolnir, a testament to the nobility and honor required to wield such power. Beyond its strength and its role in myths, Mjolnir also has symbolic importance in Norse culture. Mjolnir pendants have been found at various archaeological sites, worn as amulets for protection, and as a statement of faith in the Norse gods. Number 3. Draupnir. Draupnir, whose name translates to the Dripping One, is a legendary gold bracelet belonging to Odin, the father of all, the supreme god in Norse mythology. But it is not a simple ornament, since it has the magical ability to multiply. Every 9 nights, Draupnir produces 8 gold rings of the same size and weight as the original. Thus, Draupnir is not just a jewel, but an inexhaustible source of wealth. The origin of Draupnir is as fascinating as the item itself. It was created by the talented dwarven brothers Sindri and Brokkr as part of a bet with Loki, the god of trickery and mischief, as we've seen before. Once forged, the bracelet was presented to the gods in the Hall of Asgard, and Odin placed it on his arm. Since then, every 9 nights, another 8 rings fall from Draupnir, granting Odin infinite wealth. But the bracelet is not only a sign of wealth. He has also played a role in various sagas and epic poems. For example, after the death of his son Baldur, Odin placed Draupnir on his funeral pyre, and the ring was later returned to Odin by the messenger god Hermodar. Number 4. Gullinbursti. Gullinbursti is a magical and amazing creature from Norse mythology. As we have already seen with the other 2 items, this divine boar was created by the talented dwarves Sindri and Brokkr as part of the bet with Loki. The dwarves, masters of the forge, created Gullinbursti from pure gold. Her radiant, glowing skin was a shimmering gold, with bristles so bright they lit up the darkest night. But Gullinbursti was not just a sight to behold. He possessed remarkable abilities. She could run through the air and over the water faster than any horse, no matter how fast her enemy was, and her perpetual light could dispel any shadow. Once created, it was presented to the gods in Asgard. Freyr, the god of sun, rain, and fertility, claimed the magnificent boar. With Gullinbursti at his side, Freyr became a formidable adversary in battle. The boar's golden glow often preceded Freyr's arrival, heralding his presence with his divine light. Number 5. Skadi's bow. Skadi is one of the most intriguing figures in Norse mythology. She is a Jotun, a kind of giant, but she is also considered a goddess. She is known primarily as a goddess of the hunt and winter, and is famous for her bow, a weapon as formidable as she is. Skadi's bow is a hunting and war instrument, suitable for her strong and resistant character. With this bow, Skadi moves through the cold and snowy Nordic landscapes, stalking her prey with deadly precision. Her bow becomes an extension of her very being, each arrow her will flying toward her target. But beyond its practical function, the Skadi arch also has a symbolic dimension. As a Jotun, Skadi represents the wild and uncontrollable forces of nature, and her bow can therefore be seen as a symbol of that wild autonomy. The shot arrow cannot be returned, just as the processes of nature cannot be reversed once they have been set in motion. In the myths, Skadi is a formidable figure, known as much for her fury as for her bravery. For example, when her father was killed by the gods, Skadi marched to Asgard, the fortress of the gods, armed with her bow and ready to avenge her death. The gods, impressed by her audacity, agreed to make it up to her, and Skadi became one of them, showing that even the gods respected her power and her bow. Number 6. Gleipnir. Gleipnir is a truly unique creation in Norse mythology, a chain like no other. His story is intrinsically linked to that of the monstrous wolf Fenrir, son of the trickster god Loki and the giantess Angerboda. Fenrir was a creature of formidable strength that grew endlessly, inciting fear and unrest among the gods of Asgard. Concerned by the threat Fenrir posed, the gods searched for ways to contain the wolf. They tried twice to chain Fenrir with huge iron chains forged by the gods, but both times Fenrir proved too powerful and easily broke the chains. It was then that the gods turned to the dwarves, known for their skill in the forge and their magic. The dwarves forged Gleipnir, a chain made not of metal but of the most unlikely elements: the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beards of women, the roots of mountains, the nerves of the bear, the breath of the fish, and the bird's saliva. Gleipnir, despite being as thin and smooth as a silken ribbon, possessed unmatched strength. When the gods returned to Fenrir with Gleipnir, the wolf was wary, suspecting some trap. He only agreed to be bound if one of the gods put his hand in his mouth as a guarantee. The god Tyr, known for his courage, agreed, and when Fenrir discovered that he could not break Gleipnir, he bit off Tyr's hand. Thus, Gleipnir achieved what no other chain could: contain the ferocious force of Fenrir. It is said that Fenrir will remain bound by Gleipnir until Ragnarok, the end of the world in Norse mythology. Although seemingly soft and fragile, Gleipnir is a reminder that true strength does not always lie in physical appearance, and that even the most challenging obstacles can be overcome with ingenuity and creativity. Number 7. Andvaranaut. Andvaranaut is a precious jewel imbued with legendary power. deeply rooted in Norse mythology and Germanic literature. This jewel, also known as the Ring of Andvari, is the center of stories of greed, betrayal, and misfortune. Its origin is found in the dwarf Andvari, a clever and cunning dwarf who lived in the form of a fish in the depths of a mountain river. Andvari was known for his immense wealth, but mostly for a gold ring called Andvari Naut, which was said to have the ability to produce gold. However, Andvari's life and the fate of the ring would be forever changed when the god Loki caught him in his magical fishing net. In order to save his life, Andvari had to deliver all of his treasures to Loki, including the precious Andvari Naut. However, before handing it over, Andvari cursed the ring, declaring that it would bring misfortune and death to whoever possessed it. And so, Andvari Naut passed from hand to hand, unleashing tragedy and misfortune in his path. Each possessor, drawn by its dazzling brilliance and the promise of wealth from it, met a terrible fate. From King Hreidmar, who was slain by his own children, to Sigurd, a famous hero who died in a plot of deceit and revenge, the ring was a constant source of misery. Number 8. Brisingamen. Brisingamen is a jewel without equal, recognized as the most beautiful and precious necklace of all existence. It is not simply a jewel, it is a masterpiece, an embodiment of beauty and desire. But more than that, Brisingamen is a manifestation of the powerful influence of the goddess who possessed her, Freyja. Freyja, the Norse goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, and also a central figure in magic and war, is the rightful owner of Brisingamen. This necklace is so dazzling and enchanting that even Freyja herself, known for the matchless beauty of it, was mesmerized by the magnificence of it. The story goes that Freyja saw the necklace in the forge of the four dwarves known as the Brisings. Enchanted by her beauty, Freyja wanted the necklace for herself. However, the dwarves were not willing to give it up for gold or silver. Instead, they demanded that Freyja spend one night with each of them. Freyja, driven by her desire for her necklace, agreed to her demand. With the Brisingamen necklace around her neck, the already stunning Freyja became a being of unmatched beauty, drawing the admiration and desire of gods and mortals alike. However, the jewel is not only a symbol of beauty and desire, it also represents Freyja's cunning and determination to get what she wants, even if it means making considerable sacrifices. Number 9. Skidbladnir. Skidbladnir is a name that resonates with wonder in Norse mythology. It is not a sword, a shield, or a jewel. Skidbladnir is indeed a unique vessel, a ship like no other. Its origin and characteristics make it a marvel among mythical artifacts. This ship of the gods was not forged by humans or gods, but by the skillful and mysterious dwarves. The craft was made at the request of the trickster god, Loki, who gave it to Freyr, the Norse god of prosperity and abundance, as a gift of reconciliation. Now one might think, what makes this ship so special? After all, it's just a boat, right? But Skidbladnir is no ordinary ship. She possesses magical properties that defy mortal comprehension. It is the largest ship ever built, capable of carrying all the gods on board at once, no matter how many there are. Despite its immense size, it can be folded like a cloth when not in use and stored in a pocket. This marvelous ship also has the magical property of always having a favorable wind driving its sails, allowing the gods to travel quickly wherever they wish to go. The ride in is always safe and fast. Regardless of the destination, the ship can reach it with ease and efficiency, being immune to the dangers of the sea and storms. In the vast cosmos of Norse mythology, this ship is a bond of union, a bearer of the gods, and a symbol of the wondrous skill of the dwarves and Loki's ingenuity. Number 10. Gjallarhorn. The Gjallarhorn, whose name roughly translates to the sounding horn, is one of the most famous and symbolic objects in Norse mythology. This object is mainly associated with Heimdall, the guardian god of the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connects Asgard, the abode of the gods, with the human world, Midgard. Heimdall is known as the keen-eared god and the watcher of the gods, and his horn, the Gjallarhorn, is an extension of these roles. With supernatural hearing from him, Heimdall can hear the growth of grass on the ground and the wool on the sheep. But his most important task is to stay on guard against the attack of the giants, and for this, he has the Gjallarhorn. This is not an object of daily use. Its purpose is very specific, and its sound is meant to mark an event of cosmic importance. According to ancient sagas, the horn is kept hidden, buried under the sacred tree Yggdrasil, awaiting its use. The day the giants rise to attack Asgard and Ragnarok, the end of the world is about to begin. Heimdall will take the Gjallarhorn and blow into it. The sound of the horn will be so powerful that it will echo through the 9 worlds, awakening the gods and alerting them to the start of the last great battle. This will be the final clarion call, the call to war that will mark the end and rebirth of the world. Yggdrasil is the world tree in Norse mythology, a giant evergreen ash tree that connects and sustains all the realms of the cosmos. Its roots and branches reach out to distant places and touch each of the 9 worlds. Today, we will delve into Asgard, the majestic home of the Aesir gods. As I begin this series, I will show you the stories and mysteries of the 9 worlds of Norse mythology. Origins of Asgard. Asgard is one of the 9 worlds in Norse mythology and represents the home of the Aesir gods, one of the 2 main groups of gods, the other being the Vanir. Although Asgard is primarily the home of the Aesir, it was not always peaceful among the gods. There was a war between the Aesir and the Vanir. This we will see when we get to Vanaheim. The creation of Asgard, as well as that of other worlds, is related to the act of creation that gave birth to the Norse universe. According to the sources, in the beginning there was only the primordial chaos, the void of Ginnungagap, and 2 opposing realms, Niflheim, of cold and fog, and Muspelheim, of fire and heat. From their encounter arose Ymir, the first giant, and Audumla, the cosmic cow. From Ymir and his descendants, the first beings were formed, and from him himself, after being slain by Odin and his brothers Vili and Vi, the world, including Asgard, was created. Structure and locations. Asgard is composed of kingdoms with palaces and halls, each belonging to a particular god. Gladsheim is one of the most important realms, and is where the main god, Odin, resides. This kingdom stands out for having 2 of the most emblematic halls. Valhalla, for example, is the famous Hall of Odin. It is perhaps the most famous hall in Asgard. It is here that the bravest warriors, fallen in battle, are taken by the Valkyries after their death. It is said that they prepare in Valhalla for Ragnarok, the final battle. During the day, they train and fight each other, and at night, they heal and feast with Odin. Valaskjalf is the other special hall belonging to Odin. In this hall is his throne, Hlidskjalf. From this throne, he has the ability to observe all the kingdoms and be aware of every event that happens in them. On the throne, Odin achieves Sidr, a type of magic that grants him omniscience. Valhalla is not the only place where fallen warriors reside. Freyja is a Vanir goddess who resides in Asgard. It is said that she chooses half of the fallen in battle, while Odin receives the other half in Valhalla. Folkvangr is described as a vast field where Freyja receives her guests. Located within Folkvangr, we find Sessrumnir, Freyja's hall. In Asgard, we can also find the Rainbow Bridge that connects with Midgard, the human world. Himinbjorg is the home of Heimdall, the guardian of the bridge. It is located on the edge of Asgard, which translates as Heavenly Mountains. From here, Heimdall can drink his mead and keep watch, for he has the keenest vision and hearing of all the gods. He keeps watch waiting to blow his horn, Gjallarhorn, when the forces of chaos approach and Ragnarok begins. Thrudheim is another of the kingdoms, and Bilskirnir is his palace. According to mythology, contains 540 rooms and is the largest building in existence. This is the place where Thor resides with his family. Vingolf is the hall where the goddesses reside. It is described as a beautiful and peaceful place, suitable for the female divinities of Asgard. Stories associated with Asgard. Numerous sagas and myths take place in Asgard or involve its inhabitants, such as the theft of Sif's hair. In the vast realm of Asgard, home to gods and goddesses, a scandal broke out that would affect peace among the deities and require cunning and wit to correct. At the center of this story is Loki, the cunning and often mischievous god of deception. One day, driven by his playful and mischievous nature, Loki decided to play a prank on Thor, the mighty god of thunder. While Sif, Thor's beautiful wife, slept soundly, Loki crept in and cut off her splendid golden hair, which was her greatest pride and the envy of all the goddesses in Asgard. Upon awakening, Sif was devastated to discover that her beautiful hair was gone. When Thor saw the state his wife was in, his fury knew no bounds. Loki, knowing Thor's temperament and understanding the consequences of his actions, found himself in a desperate situation.
Loki! Turn off the Tesseract or I'll destroy it.
You can't. There is no stopping it. There is only the war.
Thor caught Loki and demanded a solution. The wily god, ever quick, promised that he would return to Sif even more beautiful and magical hair than the one he had taken from her. To fulfill his promise, Loki knew he needed the help of the most skilled craftsmen of the 9 worlds, the dwarves of Svartalfheim. He traveled to this dark and mysterious realm, home to the dwarves, who were known for their skill in forging and magic. Loki, with his characteristic cunning, made a wager with 2 groups of dwarves, the sons of Ivaldi and the brothers Brock and Sindri. He challenged them to produce gifts more wondrous than those of the other group, promising their heads if they failed. The dwarves, never shying away from a challenge and also wishing to see Loki humiliated, accepted. They worked tirelessly at their forges, producing wonders: the golden boar Gullinbursti, the gold-dripping Draupnir ring, and, most important to Loki, a golden scalp for Sif that would grow on her head as if it were her own hair. But Loki's machinations did not end there. To make sure he won the bet, he tried to sabotage the work of the Brock brothers and Sindri. Despite his attempts, however, the brothers produced equally magnificent gifts, including Thor's hammer Mjolnir. When Loki returned to Asgard with the gifts, including the beautiful hair for Sif, there was a great celebration. Sif, with her new golden hair which shone even more radiantly than before, was the center of attention. But the story did not end there, for Loki had to face the consequences of his wager with the dwarves, which led to more adventures and mischief. Loki's act, although initially malicious, resulted in the acquisition of some of the gods' most prized items. Another famous tale is that of the building of the walls of Asgard. Asgard faced an unprecedented threat. Its defenses, though majestic, were fragile in the face of the dangers of the cosmos. The need for a sturdy fortress was evident, and so began one of the best-known stories of the Norse pantheon. One day, an unknown builder appeared before the gods, offering to build a wall around Asgard, a fortress so impregnable that even the mightiest giants of Jotunheim could not penetrate it. But his price was not in gold or silver. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his wife, and in addition, the bright sun and radiant moon to light his way. The gods, led by Odin, were perplexed. On the one hand, they longed for the security the builder promised, but the price was exorbitant. After long deliberations, they devised a plan, largely influenced by the ingenious Loki. They would accept the builder's offer, but on one condition: he must complete the wall in a single winter, without the help of any other man. If even one stone was out of place when the first day of spring arrived, he would receive nothing. Confident, but with a condition of his own, the builder asked that he be allowed to use his faithful steed, Svartalfari, to assist in the task. After another consultation, and again influenced by Loki, who claimed to have a plan, the gods agreed. Construction began, and to the growing horror of the gods, the builder and Svartalfari worked at an unimaginable pace. Stones were being laid rapidly, and the fortress rose higher every day. With spring fast approaching, the gods, fearing to lose Freya and the stars, turned to Loki, demanding a solution. Loki, ever cunning, had a plan. One night, while the builder and Svartalfari were carrying stones, a beautiful mare came out of the forest, distracting the steed. It was Loki, who had transformed himself to seduce Svartalfari away from his task. The distraction worked, and without his steed, the builder could not complete the wall in time. When spring came, a single stone was out of place. The gods rejoiced, and holding up their end of the bargain, denied the builder his reward. Enraged, the builder revealed his true form, that of a giant, and prepared to face the gods. But Thor, the god of thunder, intervened and ended the conflict with a mighty blow from his hammer. Asgard now had a new fortress, and Loki's cunning had once again saved the day. However, as always in the stories of the gods, actions had consequences, and Loki's antics would lead to even greater and more dangerous adventures in the future, such as the death of Baldur. In Asgard, the presence of Baldur, the most beautiful and benevolent god, shone. His light was not only a physical manifestation, but also a glow that emanated from his spirit and enchanted all who crossed his path. To many, Baldur was the very embodiment of all that was pure and good in the 9 realms. However, with beauty and goodness often comes envy and fear. Baldur began to have dark and disturbing dreams about his own death. These dreams were so vivid and recurring that they deeply disturbed the gods. Frigg, his devoted mother, and the queen of Asgard, decided to take action. She set out on a journey throughout the cosmos, demanding that every being, stone, metal, and element, swear not to harm her beloved son. All agreed, recognizing Baldur's harmlessness, except for the mistletoe, which Frigg overlooked as too young and insignificant to swear. Meanwhile, Loki, the trickster, watched with his usual cunning. He saw an opportunity and began to hatch one of his most malicious plans. He discovered Baldur's one weak spot, mistletoe. He created a sharp dart made of this plant and bided his time. One day, at a meeting of gods, they began to play a game that demonstrated Baldur's invulnerability. They threw objects and weapons at him, all of which deflected harmlessly, unable to hurt him. Loki, taking advantage of the occasion, sneaked up on Hoder, Baldur's blind brother, and offered him a part in the game. He gave him the mistletoe dart and guided him in throwing it. The dart, driven with precision, pierced Baldur's heart, and the luminous god fell dead on the spot. A deafening silence fell over Asgard. The joy and radiance that once filled the realm was darkened by Baldur's tragic death. Despair gripped the gods, and though they attempted to rescue him from the realm of the dead, circumstances and Loki's tricks prevented them from doing so. Baldur would remain in Hell until after Ragnarok. Baldur's death was not simply the loss of a beloved god, it was the first and most painful harbinger of Ragnarok, the end of the world, where the gods would face the giants in a final battle. With the fall of Baldur, the foundations of Asgard shook, and the fate of the gods was irrevocably sealed. The final fate of Asgard is revealed in the Prophecy of Ragnarok, the destruction and renewal of the world. According to this prophecy, Asgard will be overrun, and many gods, including Odin and Thor, will meet their end. However, after Ragnarok, it is predicted that a new world will be reborn from the ashes of the old, and some gods will survive or be reborn. Vanaheim. Vanaheim is the home of the Vanir, one of the two main families of gods, famous among other things for the great war of the gods between the Aesir and the Vanir, as we will see later. Although there is much information about the Aesir residing in Asgard, there are fewer specific details about Vanaheim and the Vanir in the traditional sources. However, what is known is essential to understanding the dynamics of Norse mythology. The Vanir are gods associated primarily with fertility, prosperity, the sea, and other aspects of nature and wealth. Some of the best-known Vanir include Njord and his children, Freyr and Freyja. Since the Vanir are gods of fertility, nature, and the sea, it is logical to assume that Vanaheim is a realm of abundant natural beauty, fertile fields, dense forests, and extensive coastlines. The seasons may play an important role in the kingdom's life cycle, with rituals and festivals celebrating seasonal changes and the bounty of the land. While the exact architecture of Vanaheim is not described in detail, it likely reflects a harmony with nature. Dwellings and structures could be constructed of natural materials and designed to blend in with the surrounding landscape. Although the Vanir are primarily known for their relationship with the Aesir, it is likely that Vanaheim had interactions with other worlds, such as Alfheim, home of the Light Elves, and perhaps even Midgard. Trade, cultural exchange, and expeditions could be common activities. It is important to mention that the Eddas and other sources of Norse mythology do not provide an exhaustive description of Vanaheim, and much of what we can imagine about this realm comes from fragmentary pieces and the contextual relationship with other aspects of mythology. One thing that is certain is that there was a war between the two families of gods. The war between the Aesir and the Vanir. In early times, long before Ragnarok was prophesied, a conflict arose between the Aesir and the Vanir. The precise reasons for this conflict vary according to the sources, but the clash is clear. This war is unique in that it is not gods against giants, but gods against other gods. The Aesir, based in Asgard, were gods associated with war and power. Their ranks included deities such as Odin, Thor, and Frigg. On the other hand, the Vanir, originating in Vanaheim, were more associated with fertility, prosperity, and magic. Njord and his children, Freyr and Freyja, were prominent among them. The spark that ignited the war was an act of mistrust. the Aesir brought to Asgard a Vanir seer named Gullveig. Fascinated and fearful of her sorcery power and obsession with wealth, the Aesir tried to kill her 3 times, but she was reborn after each attempt. This act of violence against the sorceress led to a direct confrontation between the Aesir and the Vanir. The battles that followed were intense, and neither side managed to gain a decisive advantage. The Vanir, with their mastery of magic and connection to nature, were formidable opponents. On the other hand, the Aesir, with their strength and combat skills, did not give ground easily either. The war reached a stalemate, with both sides exhausted and recognizing that complete annihilation of one by the other would be impossible. Instead of continuing an endless struggle, the gods sought a peaceful solution. They decided to seal a truce by spitting into a large cauldron. From this symbolic union and their combined saliva, a being named Kvasir was born. He would be the wisest of all, a living emblem of their pact of peace. To further solidify this truce, the 2 groups of gods exchanged hostages. The Vanir sent Njord and his children, Freyr and Freyja, to live among the Aesir. In return, the Aesir sent Hoenir, a god of high rank, and Mimir, famous for his wisdom. However, the Vanir soon felt cheated with Hoenir, as he seemed indecisive and a bad leader when Mimir was not at his side to give him advice. In retaliation, they beheaded Mimir and sent his head back to Asgard. Odin, however, performed magic to preserve Mimir's head, which continued to bestow advice. In time, tensions eased. The Aesir and Vanir learned to coexist harmoniously in Asgard. The adopted Vanir gods, especially Freyr and Freyja, became central figures in the Norse pantheon. This union of the 2 divine factions symbolized the idea that cooperation and mutual understanding can overcome even the deepest rivalries. The war between the Aesir and the Vanir and the subsequent peace reminds us that even the gods are not exempt from conflict and reconciliation. Although Vanaheim and the specific details of the Vanir are not extensively described in the preserved sources, their influence and the history of their interaction with the Aesir is central to the understanding of the Norse pantheon and the complexities of their divine relationships. Alfheim. Alfheim is one of the 9 worlds and is home to the light elves, beings who are often described as benevolent and related to light or beauty. Contrary to the dark elves of Svartalfheim, the light elves are viewed more positively in Norse lore. Although the elves are mentioned on several occasions in the sagas and the Eddas, specific information about Alfheim and the detailed activities of these beings is unfortunately limited in the sources that have survived to the present day. The story of how Freyr came to be the ruler of Alfheim is related to an Old Norse custom of giving a gift to the baby that gets its first tooth, an acknowledgement of the baby's transition to infancy. In the case of the gods, this rite was of much greater magnitude. When Freyr, the Vanir god of fertility and prosperity, showed his first tooth, it was an event of great joy. To celebrate, he was granted the kingdom of Alfheim, the home of the light elves. This gift was not only a symbolic gift, but also solidified Freyr's role as a deity linked to fertility, light, and life, aspects that are very much in tune with the attributes of the light elves. From that time on, Freyr was recognized as the ruler and protector of Alfheim and its elven inhabitants. Although no detailed descriptions of their appearance or daily activities are provided, the light elves are generally regarded as beings of great beauty and light. They can be compared, in some ways, to idealized versions of elves in other European traditions, where they are almost ethereal beings associated with magic, beauty, and nature. In some sagas and texts, it is suggested that elves, both light and dark, were the object of some form of veneration or ritual practices. For example, there are references to blot, or sacrifices, made to elves in some historical sources. This suggests that they had a place in the religious life of the Old Norse peoples, although the exact details of these practices and beliefs are, for the most part, lost to time. Midgard. Midgard, which in Old Norse means middle enclosure or middle world, is one of the 9 worlds and refers to the land inhabited by humans. Midgard is connected to Asgard, the world of the gods, by Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. The world also has connections to other realms, either through hidden paths, mystical rivers, or the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree that connects all the worlds. Creation of Midgard. The history of Midgard is linked to the creation of the universe according to Norse mythology. In the beginning, only cold Niflheim and warm Muspelheim existed, separated by the void of Ginnungagap. From their interaction came Ymir, the first primordial giant, and Audumla, the cosmic cow. As Ymir slept, he sweated, and from his sweat more giants were born. Meanwhile, Audumla fed by licking blocks of salty ice, gradually revealing Buri, an ancestor of the gods. Buri had a son named Bor, who together with Bestla, daughter of a giant, had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers, unhappy with the domination of the primordial giants, conspired and murdered Ymir. With Ymir's body, they created the world. His blood became oceans and lakes. His bones became mountains. His brain became clouds, and his skull became the sky, supported by 4 dwarves at each cardinal point. From his skin, they created the land, which is Midgard. The abyss surrounding Midgard was filled with Ymir's blood, creating an ocean. After forming the world from Ymir's body, Odin and his brothers found 2 logs on the beach, one of ash and one of elm. From them, they created the first humans. Odin gave them life and breath, Vili gave them mind and movement, and Ve gave them form, speech, hearing, and vision. Odin and his brothers realized the need to protect their most precious creation, humans. The newly created Midgard, the world of humans, was at the center of everything, exposed to influences and threats from other realms, especially Jotunheim, the land of the giants. These giants, often at odds with the gods, could pose a danger to humanity if they had free access to Midgard. So, to protect humans, the gods decided to create natural barriers around Midgard. The first and most obvious of these defenses was the vast ocean that surrounded the land. This was no ordinary ocean, for its vastness and strength would act as a shield against any unwanted intruders. But one ocean, vast as it was, would not be enough. The gods decided to add a second line of defense, one that would be both a barrier and a warning to those who would attempt to cross the ocean. Jormungandr, the world serpent. This colossal creature, thrown into the sea by Odin when he was younger, grew so large that he was able to encircle Midgard and bite his own tail. Its constant presence served as a reminder of the power and vigilance of the gods, and its size and ferocity would discourage any force that attempted to approach Midgard's shores. With these defenses in place, the gods watched with satisfaction as Midgard flourished under their protection. Although threats always lurked in the shadows and stories of conflicts and encounters between gods, giants, and humans were often repeated, the inhabitants of Midgard could rest assured that their world was well protected. Gods often visit or interact with humans, either to help, deceive, or test humanity. Midgard is also the setting of several epic sagas and poems, describing heroic deeds, tragedies, loves, and conflicts, such as the story of Thor and Hymir's fishing. The story begins with Thor, the god of thunder, visiting the abode of the giant Hymir. After a series of events demonstrating Thor's strength and appetite, the two decide to embark on a fishing trip. As they embark, Thor asks Hymir for fishing bait, but the giant tells him he must get it himself. So Thor goes to Hymir's pasture and kills one of his bulls, taking the animal's head as bait. Already in the water, Hymir captures 2 whales with ease, but Thor has a much bigger target in mind, Jormungandr, the giant serpent that surrounds Midgard. Without telling Hymir his plan, Thor casts his line into the deep sea, using the bull's head as bait. After a while, Thor feels a massive tug on his line. With his godlike strength, he begins to pull, and the resistance he feels is immense. It is Jormungandr, taking the bait and being lifted from the ocean floor. As Thor continues to pull at it, the serpent spews venom and fury, causing tremors and agitation in the sea. With each tug, the serpent comes closer and closer to the surface, and it is said that during this confrontation, Thor's eyes glowed with intense fire, and his feet pierced the bottom of the ship, seeking a better foothold on the seabed. As Jormungandr emerges, the situation becomes more dangerous. Hymir, terrified by the sight of the world serpent and fearing that its release may cause the end of the world, quickly cuts Thor's fishing line. Jormungandr, freed, returns to the depths, leaving Thor furious. He was so enraged at having missed the chance to capture the serpent that he strikes Hymir, throwing him into the water, and returns to Asgard on his own. The Icelandic sagas, while not always dealing directly with gods or mythical beings, take place in Midgard and reflect the life, culture, conflicts, and beliefs of the people who lived in the Viking Age. Although Midgard has its own defenses, it is not isolated. The gods frequently visit and sometimes even reside in Midgard. For example, Heimdall, the guardian of Bifrost, lived for a time as a human under the name Rig, creating the social classes of humanity. In some versions, it is Odin and not Heimdall who poses as Rig. Heimdall, known as the Shining Watcher of the Gods and guardian of the Bifrost, decided one day to descend to Midgard to walk among humans. Adopting the name Rig, he wandered the earth in the guise of a man. As he traveled, he came to a humble hut, where he found two elders named Ai and Edda. Although their life was simple and their food was not delicious, they offered Rigger the best hospitality they could. He spent 3 nights with them, and in the 9th month, Edda gave birth to a boy. They named him Thrall. His appearance was rough and strong, destined to be a workman with calloused hands. From him would arise the Thrall class, the workers and servants of society. Rigger continued his journey and arrived at a house better built than the previous one. There he found Afi and Amma, a couple who lived off the land, but had more comforts than the former. Once again, Rigger spent 3 nights with them. 9 months later, Amma gave birth to a boy they named Karl. Karl would grow up strong and skilled, a farmer and craftsman. From him would arise the class of Karls, the farmers and free laborers of society. Finally, Rigger arrived at a large mansion where he stayed with Fadir and Modir, a couple of noble appearance and wealth. After spending 3 nights with them, a child with shining skin and glowing eyes was born, whom they named Jarl. This child was destined for greatness, to be a leader, a nobleman. From him would come the class of Jarls, nobility, and aristocracy. But Rigger had one more purpose with Jarl. He returned when Jarl was a young man and educated him in the arts of war, leadership, and magical runes. Jarl had many sons, but the most prominent of them all was Connor, who would be the first to be called Konungur, or king. Thus, through his journey and his actions, Heimdall established the social classes in Midgard, showing how the different classes have specific roles and purposes in society, and how these roles are, in some way, influenced by the divine. Like everything in Norse cosmology, Midgard has a prophesied destiny. During Ragnarok, the world is expected to be consumed by chaos and destruction. Before Ragnarok begins, the world will experience harsh winters called Fimbulwinter. During these winters, Midgard will face extreme cold, and the morality of mankind will decline. There will be conflicts. Brothers will fight against brothers and family ties will be broken. Jormungandr, the world serpent that surrounds Midgard, will stir in the ocean, causing huge waves to flood the land. This serpent will engage Thor in a deadly battle. Although Thor will succeed in killing Jormungandr, he will also be wounded by its venom and will walk only 9 steps before falling dead. With the Bifrost broken, the fire giants of Muspelheim, led by Surtur, will advance towards Midgard and the other realms. Surtur, with his flaming sword, will set fire to everything in his path, causing fires that will consume the entire world. After the battle and destruction, the world will be submerged in water, cleansing the land of all the destruction and chaos brought by Ragnarok. Svartalfheim. Svartalfheim, sometimes also called Nidavellir, is the realm of the Svartalfar, dark elves, and, in some interpretations, of the Dvergar, dwarves. These names and categories in different texts and translations can sometimes be intermingled, leading to some confusion as to whether they are distinct beings or simply different names for the same entities. Although the sources do not describe in detail the social structure of Svartalfheim, it is likely that they had a hierarchy or structure based on lineages, craft skills, and knowledge. The most talented or wise dwarves tended to occupy positions of leadership or respect. In legends, there are rivalries and competitions between different clans or groups of dwarves, especially when it comes to demonstrating their skill in forging. Svartalfheim is a vast subway realm, full of caverns, tunnels, and cities forged in darkness. Illumination came from luminescent ores, fiery forges, and magical gems. Its depths held countless mineral riches. Dwarves mined and used these resources, not only for their material value, but also for their magical and artistic properties. Dwarves are master craftsmen. Not only do they work with precious metals and stones, but they infuse magic and enchantment into their creations. The quality of their work is so renowned that even the gods often seek their skill. Despite residing in their own realm, dwarves have numerous interactions with the gods. whether forging objects for them or in wagers and deals. One of the best-known stories is Loki's wager with the dwarves Brokkr and Sindri, as we saw in the world of Asgard. Another famous story is that of the Ring of Andvari. The Ring of Andvari. The Ring of Andvari is an integral part of Norse mythology, especially in connection with the saga of the Volsungs. I will try to bring the most famous sagas of the Nordic world, so I ask for your support. Comment if you want to see in the channel the Nordic sagas. Andvari was a dwarf who lived under a waterfall and had the ability to transform into a fish. He possessed a great treasure, and among that treasure was the Andvaranaut ring, which had the ability to produce more gold. One day, the god Loki, in one of his typical impulsive acts, kills Otter's son, who was in the form of an otter. Otter's brothers Fafnir and Regan capture Loki and demand compensation for their brother's death. The compensation they demand is that the otter's skin be filled with gold. To satisfy this demand, Loki captures Andvari in his fish form and demands all of his treasure. Reluctantly, Andvari surrenders his treasure, but tries to retain his precious ring, Andvaranaut. Loki, realizing this, demands the ring as well. Relinquishing the ring, Andvari curses it, declaring that it will bring misfortune and destruction to anyone who possesses it.
Precious.
Fafnir, blinded by greed and the desire to possess the treasure, betrays and kills his father Hreidmar, and then takes all the gold for himself. The curse of the ring begins to manifest, and Fafnir, increasingly paranoid and possessive, transforms into a dragon to protect his treasure. Regan, wanting the treasure for himself, tricks his ward Sigurd into killing Fafnir. After an epic battle, Sigurd kills the dragon and takes part of the treasure, including the cursed ring. Following the advice of some birds he had heard after consuming the dragon's blood, Sigurd kills Regan to prevent his betrayal. The curse of the ring continues to influence events, leading to betrayal, deceit, murder, and tragedy in the lives of those who come into contact with it. The Tyrfing Sword. Tyrfing Sword is another of the creations of these skilled and magical craftsmen. This is a magical and cursed sword that appears in several Norse sources, the saga of Hervarar being one of the most detailed texts. It all begins when a king named Svartalfheim, grandson of the god Odin, captures two dwarves. He holds them prisoner and orders them to forge a sword that never fails to strike, never rusts and cuts through iron and stone like cloth. The dwarves comply with his demand and create the sword Tyrfing, but in revenge for their captivity, they also place a curse on it. The sword must kill a man each time it is drawn, and will cause 3 great misfortunes. Moreover, the sword is destined to be Svartalfheim's undoing. As predicted, Tyrfing brings misfortune to Svartalfheim, who dies in a duel against a berserker named Arngrim. Arngrim takes the sword and later marries Eyfura, Svartalfheim's granddaughter. The sword then passes into the hands of Arngrim's descendants, leading to more misfortune and tragedy along the way, such as the confrontation between Heidrek and his brother Angantyr. Both brothers end up dead in the contest, and the sword is buried next to Angantyr. Later, Heidrek's daughter Hervor decides to claim the sword from her inheritance. Hervor visits Angantyr's grave and challenges the spirits of the dead to obtain Tyrfing. Eventually, she acquires the sword, which remains a central figure in the later events of the saga. Tyrfing's curse and its ability to bring tragedy to those who possess it makes it one of the most famous and feared swords in Norse mythology, created by the mighty dwarves of Svartalfheim, unique in the crafting of these legendary magical objects. Muspelheim. Muspelheim is one of the 2 original realms in Norse cosmology, with Niflheim being the other. Together, they represent the fundamental and opposing forces of the universe, fire and ice. While Niflheim is a place of cold and darkness, Muspelheim is a land of burning heat and eternal flames. It is in the Ginnungagap, the cosmic void between Muspelheim in the south and Niflheim in the north, that the sparks and heat of Muspelheim meet the cold ice of Niflheim. This encounter causes the ice to begin to melt, and from this process Ymir, the first giant, and the primordial cow, Audumbla, are born. The Muspelsmegir are igneous beings. Their essence is linked to the heat, flames, and brilliance of their home. Their creation is not detailed in the traditional sources, but it is understood that they originate from Muspelheim. They possess a special resistance and affinity to fire and heat, and are impressive-looking beings, reflecting the flames and energy of their realm. Surtur is described as a Jotun, giant, associated with fire. His very name, Surtur, means the Black One, or the Dark One in Old Norse, possibly referring to the smoky or fiery nature. Surtur is the guardian of Muspelheim, protecting its borders and ensuring that no unauthorized beings enter or leave the realm. Surtur possesses a great sword that burns with bright flames. According to the Prophecies of Ragnarok in the Eddas, Surtur and the armies of Muspelheim will advance to the final battlefield called Yggdrasil. Surtur will face gods in combat. It is predicted that he will fight and ultimately kill Freyr, one of the most important Vanir gods, which is especially tragic since Freyr will have surrendered his own magical sword earlier and will be unarmed in front of Surtur during combat. With his flaming sword, Surtur will destroy the world with fire, engulfing the 9 worlds in flames. This act of destruction is also an act of purification, for, after Ragnarok, a new world will rise from the ashes of the old one. Muspelheim, with its fiery inhabitants and its imposing leader, represents a primordial force in Norse mythology. Niflheim. Niflheim, as described in the sources, is a place of extreme cold, with icy landscapes, dense mists, and darkness. It is inhospitable and represents the primordial forces of the Norse universe. The word Nifl in Old Norse can be translated as dark or misty. This reinforces the idea that Niflheim is a realm shrouded in mist and darkness, far from light and warmth. At the heart of Niflheim lies Hvergelmir, according to mythology, the icy vapors originating in Niflheim and the crackling flames of Muspelheim met in the Great Void, or Ginnungagap, that existed between them. Hvergelmir is the source of these icy rivers. When these cold vapors met the hot sparks of Muspelheim, they created the perfect condition for life to emerge, giving rise to the first living being, the giant Ymir. Hvergelmir is also home to Nidhogg, the dragon or serpent that gnaws at the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. This constant action of Nidhogg, along with other animals that also damage the tree, requires that Yggdrasil be continually cared for and tended by the Norns, the goddesses of destiny, to ensure its health and stability. Niflheim is essential. Its interaction with Muspelheim sets the conditions for the creation of the cosmos and the first beings. Although it is a place of cold and darkness, it is also central to the balance of the 9 worlds in Norse mythology. Over time, a part of Niflheim becomes associated with or transformed into Helheim, the realm of the dead ruled by Hel, the daughter of Loki. Although it can also be considered as a distinct realm, both places share similarities in their description and function. Helheim. Helheim stands out as the final destination of those who do not die in battle. It is the resting place for souls who are not taken by the Valkyries to Valhalla or Folkvanger. But unlike Christian conceptions of hell, Helheim is not necessarily a place of eternal torment. Helheim, often simply called Hel, is located in Niflheim. As we saw earlier, it is a cold and foggy region. While it is not a hell in the sense of punishment and torment, it is certainly a bleak and desolate place. Odin cast Hel into Niflheim and gave her authority over that world, so that she has to administer food and lodging to those who are sent to her. That is, those who die of sickness or old age. Hel, as the ruler of Helheim, is extremely relevant and mysterious in Norse mythology. Although many of the stories centered on the Aesir gods, such as Thor and Odin, are better known, Hel plays an important role in several sagas and is a pivotal character. Hel is one of the 3 children of Loki and the giantess Angrboda, her brothers being Fenrir, the giant wolf, and Jormungandr, the world serpent. The gods, fearing the destiny that the prophecies linked to these 3 beings, decided to banish or chain them to avoid future threats. In the case of Hel, she was sent to the world of Niflheim and given dominion over a large part of it, which has since been known as Helheim. Unlike Loki, who is often portrayed as malicious and deceitful, Hel is more of a neutral figure. While it is true that she rules the realm of the dead, she is not attributed with malice or cruelty. She is a ruler, and as such she abides by her own rules and decisions. She is just, but also unwavering in her decisions. Hel is described in a very peculiar way. Half of her body is said to be of a normal color, while the other half is completely pale or even bluish. This duality symbolizes her role between life and death. It is crucial to understand that, in Norse mythology, dying in battle is considered a great honor. Those who die fighting are chosen by the Valkyries and taken to Valhalla, the hall of Odin, or Folkvanger, the field ruled by the goddess Freya. However, those who die of illness, old age, or non-combat related causes travel to Helheim. Despite its gloomy atmosphere, It is not a punishment in the traditional sense. It is simply a different resting place. For souls traveling to Helheim, the journey is not an easy one. One of the first challenges souls face on their way is the Gjöll River. This river acts as a barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead, symbolizing a soul's final transition from earthly life to the afterlife. The only way to cross this river is across the Jalarbru, a bridge often described as glowing or covered in gold. This bridge is a spiritual journey that souls must undertake, leaving behind everything they once knew. Modgudr is the first defender the souls encounter. She guards the bridge, making sure that only souls that belong to Helheim cross it. Beyond the bridge, at the very gates of Helheim, the imposing dog Garm barks and roars at anyone who approaches. Often compared to Cerberus from Greek mythology, Garm serves a dual function, preventing souls from entering or leaving without permission. There are areas within Helheim that are even less welcoming. Nastrand is one such dreaded area, a beach covered in corpses and poisonous snakes, and it is here that murderers, traitors, and oathbreakers face the consequences of their deeds. The snakes spill their venom into a river that flows through Nastrand, and the damned are forced to wade through it as part of their punishment. During Ragnarok, it is said that Garm and Hel will lead the inhabitants of Helheim in battle against the gods. These inhabitants will include those who have led dishonorable lives, as well as the malevolent entities that reside in the realm of the dead. After the cataclysm of Ragnarok, when the 9 worlds face destruction and rebirth, Baldur and Hodr leave Helheim and return to the world, symbolizing a new era. Hel, as ruler of Helheim, has dominion over those who died of disease, old age, or any cause that was not honorable in the Norse context, such as dying in battle. When Ragnarok comes, he will release these souls, creating an army of the dead that will march against the gods. While these souls are not fallen warriors like those residing in Valhalla, their numbers are immense, and their very presence adds significant weight and magnitude to the conflict. Although Hel is a more passive figure compared to other active participants in Ragnarok, his alliance with entities such as Loki, Fenrir, and Jormungandr marks a joining of forces that have ancient enmities with the Aesir gods. Hel does not necessarily fight in the vanguard, but his support and deliverance of the army of the dead underscores his crucial role in the confrontation. Once the flames and chaos of Ragnarok have subsided, and the world emerges from the waters renewed, Hel's influence and dominion over souls is also transformed, with the resurrection of gods and the promise of a new beginning. Jotunheim is often described as a wild and rugged land, characterized by mountains, forests, and inhospitable areas. This realm contrasts with the majesty of Asgard, or the ordered structure of Midgard. Jotunheim is imagined as a vast expanse of untamed nature. High mountains, some with perpetually snow-capped peaks, dominate the landscape, interspersed with deep valleys where shadows seem to hold ancient secrets. Dense, dark forests stretch as far as the eye can see, hiding within them ancient creatures and magics. Rivers roar powerfully through this rugged terrain, rising from hidden springs and flowing into deep, cold lakes. But it is not just the landscape that makes Jotunheim a formidable place. The atmosphere is charged with a primordial magic, an energy that seems to resonate from the earth itself. It is a raw and potent magic, different from the refined magic of other realms, imbued with the pure essence of creation and chaos. Life in Jotunheim is a constant struggle. Here, nature is neither tamed nor cultivated. It is confronted and respected. Survival is for the strongest, and the giants, with their imposing size and unmatched strength, are truly the masters of this savage realm. The Jotnar are ancient beings, born from the union of the first giant, Ymir, and the progeny created from his body. The relationship between the Jotnar and the gods is one of the most intriguing and complex facets of Norse mythology. Although they can be considered antagonists in many myths and sagas, it is not a strict division of good versus evil. It is more nuanced and intertwined. The Jotnar are often seen as forces of chaos and destruction, in contrast to the Aesir and Vanir, who are seen as defenders of order and civilization. However, this dichotomy is not absolute. The Jotnar also represent fundamental aspects of nature, landscape, and primordial forces. They are not evil by nature. They simply act in accordance with their essential nature, which is often in conflict with the interests and desires of the gods. Despite their conflicts, the gods and giants are connected through bloodlines and marriages. These connections underscore the idea that order and chaos, civilization and wilderness are integrated parts of the cosmos and cannot exist without each other. Odin, the chief of the Aesir gods, is an example of this interconnectedness. His mother, Bestla, is a giantess, which means that the greatest god of Asgard has giant blood in his veins. This duality within Odin reflects the constant tension between order and chaos in the Norse cosmos. Thor, the god of thunder and protector of the gods and humanity against the giants, is another example of this complexity. Although he is often shown fighting the Jotnar, his own mother, Jord, is a giantess and personification of Earth. Thor's strength and power, therefore, comes not only from his divine lineage, but also from his giantess heritage. There are many examples of marriages and relationships between gods and giants. Freyr, another Vanir god and brother of Freyja, fell in love and eventually married Gerd, a beautiful giantess. The interaction between the Jotnar and the gods is not simply one of enemies in opposition, but a complex dance of relationships, alliances, conflicts, and reconciliations. In Jotunheim, there are many halls and fortresses, but few are as prominent as Thrymheim, which in Old Norse means House of Thunder. Thrymheim, a fortress located in the highest mountains of Jotunheim, was the home of the mighty giant Thiazi. Thiazi was no ordinary giant. He possessed great strength and cunning, and had the ability to transform himself into an eagle. In this form, he once played a crucial role in an episode in which he tricked Loki, taking him to heaven and forcing him to conspire against the gods to kidnap Idun and her apples of youth. However, Thiazi's actions would cost him dearly. Attempting to escape Asgard with Idun and the apples, he was pursued by the gods. Although he initially seemed to have the advantage thanks to his speed and his eagle form, an ingenious plan led to his end. The gods lit a great fire on the walls of Asgard, and when Thiazi in his eagle form approached, the flames reached his wings, causing him to fall. The gods did not take long to finish him off. After Thiazi's death, his daughter Skadi, armed and enraged, marched towards Asgard to avenge her father. Instead of combat, however, the gods offered reparations. They promised to make her laugh, something Loki accomplished with one of his pranks, and allowed her to choose a husband from among them, though she could only see her feet to make her choice. Skadi chose what she thought were the beautiful feet of Balder, the most handsome god, but they turned out to be those of Njord, the god of the sea. The marriage between Skadi and Njord was complicated. While she loved the icy mountains, he preferred the coast and the sound of the sea. After trying to live in each other's domains, they decided to live apart. Skadi returned to Thrymheim, but with her marriage to Njord and her relationship with the gods, she became a goddess, associated with hunting, the mountains, and winter. Another legendary fortress is Utgard, perhaps the most famous fortress in Jotunheim. Located in the heart of Jotunheim lies Utgard, a fortress so vast and formidable that the very sight of it can intimidate anyone. This fortress is the domain of the cunning giant Utgard Loki, not to be confused with the Loki of Asgard, though they share a name and a talent for scheming. The most famous story associated with Utgard involves Thor and Loki, along with their two human companions. They traveled to Jotunheim with the goal of reaffirming Thor's reputation, which had been challenged by the prowess and trickery of the giants. After an arduous journey, the group finally arrived at a palace. Here they were greeted by Utgard Loki, who, after hearing their names and purposes, proposed a series of challenges to prove their worth. The challenges began with a seemingly simple race between Thialfi and a young man named Hugi. However, no matter how fast Thialfi was, Hugi was always ahead, proving to be uncatchable. Then Loki, proud of his ability to eat quickly, competed against Logi in a contest to see who could devour a row of meat in the shortest possible time. Although Loki ate quickly, Loki consumed not only the meat, but also the bones and the tray, besting the cheating god. Thor faced several challenges. First, he attempted to drink from a horn, whose contents seemed not to diminish no matter how much he drank. Next, he tried to lift a gray cat off the ground, but could only lift one of its legs. Finally, he challenged someone in Utgard Loki's court to a fight. he was introduced to an old woman, Ellie, who, to everyone's surprise, managed to bring Thor to his knees. After meeting the challenges, Thor and his companions left Utgard, carrying with them the weight of humiliation. But as they walked away, Utgard Loki revealed to them the true nature of their trials. Hugi, who was always ahead of them, was the representation of thought, immediate and unattainable. Logi, who devoured everything before Loki, was the embodiment of fire. The horn from which Thor tried to drink actually drained the ocean itself, Thor being responsible for the tides with every drink. The mysterious cat Thor tried to lift was actually Jormungandr, the serpent that embraces the entire world. And Ellie, who was able to subdue Thor, was the personification of old age, an adversary against whom even the gods cannot fight. With these revelations, Utgard Loki disappeared along with his fortress, leaving Thor and his company in the midst of an empty and deserted land. Another interesting story in these lands is that of the theft of Thor's hammer. One morning, Thor awoke to find that his prized hammer, Mjolnir, was missing. The hammer was not only an extension of his power, but also an essential tool for the defense of Asgard against the giants. The loss of Mjolnir left the gods in a vulnerable position. In desperation, Thor turned to Loki for help in discovering the whereabouts of Mjolnir. Using Freyja's magical cloak, which allowed him to shapeshift and fly, Loki traveled to Jotunheim to investigate. He soon discovered that Thrym, a mighty giant, had stolen the hammer and buried it in the earth, safe from the gods. When Loki asked him what he wanted in exchange for the hammer, Thrym revealed his price, Freyja's hand in marriage. Upon returning to Asgard with the news, Loki proposed a bold and comical plan. If Thrym wanted to marry Freyja, then they should give Freyja to him, or at least make him believe they did. Suggested by Loki, and in the face of Thor's initial reluctance, they decided to disguise Thor as the goddess of love and beauty, using a veil to cover his bearded face and giving him feminine jewelry and clothing. With Loki disguised as his maid of honor, the two traveled to Jotunheim for the marriage. Thrym, excited at the prospect of marrying Freyja, held a feast in honor of the wedding. During the dinner, the appetite of the bride aroused suspicion. Thor, still under his disguise, consumed an impressive amount of food and drink, which Loki quickly explained as Freyja's excitement and nervousness before the wedding. The climax came when Thrym, eager to give his betrothed a kiss, lifted the veil only to recoil before the fierce gaze of Thor's eyes. But before the giant could react, Mjolnir was brought in to bless the wedding, and as soon as Thor had his hammer in his hands, he unleashed his fury, putting an end to Thrym and the threat he posed to the gods. The Jotnar are beings of power, magic, and knowledge, and their relationship with the gods is complex. Some, like Aegir, are friendly to the gods, while others, like Thrym, are clearly adversarial. The story of Aegir's cauldron is one of adventure involving the gods Thor and Tyr. It all begins when the gods are enjoying a banquet in Aegir's hall. During the celebration, the Jotun of the sea mentions that he would like to offer a banquet to all the gods, but lacks a cauldron large enough to brew the ale necessary for such a feast. Hearing this, Tyr, one of the Aesir gods, remembers that the giant Hymir possesses a cauldron of adequate size for the task. So he and Thor decide to embark on a journey to Hymir's home to obtain the precious cauldron. Once they arrive at Hymir's abode, they encounter the giant's hospitality, but also his temperamental nature. During their stay, Thor is subjected to several tests by the giant. In one of these tests, Thor demonstrates his incredible strength by catching Midgard's serpent, Jormungandr, nearly pulling it out of the ocean, though he eventually escapes. After these events, Thor and Tyr reveal their true intention: to obtain the cauldron. Hymir, not quite willing to simply give it away, sets a condition. They will only take the cauldron if Thor is able to break a vessel the giant possesses, something no one has managed to do. After several failed attempts to break the vessel against hard objects, one of the women in Hymir's household gives Thor a piece of advice. He should try to break the vessel against Hymir's head, as it is the hardest material there. Following the advice, Thor throws the glass against the giant's head, and sure enough, the glass shatters. With the challenge overcome, Thor and Tyr take the cauldron and prepare to return to Asgard. However, Hymir and an army of giants oppose them. In the ensuing battle, Thor, with his mighty hammer Mjolnir, defeats the giants and secures possession of the cauldron. In the end, Aegir receives the cauldron and, with it, has the ability to offer a feast on a par with the gods, strengthening the friendship and bond between the Aesir and himself. More than mere antagonists, the Jotnar represent primordial forces often associated with specific natural elements, such as mountains, storms, or seas. They possess an ancestral power, linked directly to the beginning of the cosmos, and magic that is often more raw and powerful than that of the gods. Moreover, their knowledge encompasses ancient secrets and mysteries that even the gods seek. With the onset of Ragnarok, the barriers between the 9 worlds begin to crumble, and the forces of chaos emerge with renewed fury. Jotunheim, which has always been in tension with Asgard, becomes the main bastion of these forces. The giants, beings of primordial and ancient power, gather under a single banner, ready for war. Led by charismatic and powerful figures such as Loki, the god of deception who has broken his ties with Asgard, and Fenrir, the monstrous wolf born of Loki, the giants become a formidable threat. Armed with rocks, mountains, and powerful spells, they march into battle, their fury fueled by old enmities and a desire for vengeance. The battlefield, Vigrid, stretches for 100 leagues in all directions. Here, the gods of Asgard, led by Odin and accompanied by brave human warriors from Valhalla, will face the overwhelming hordes of Jotunheim. This will be the last great battle. In our different countries, we all have stories, tales, and legends. This is as true today as it was hundreds of years ago. Focusing our gaze on Iceland, we find the Viking saga of the Volsungs, which tells the story of a legendary family and the mythical hero Sigurd Dragonkiller. In the ancestral lands of the Vikings, long before most legends took shape, a king named Siggi was born. He was no ordinary man. He was the son of Odin himself. Siggi had the strength and cunning worthy of a demigod, but a tragedy befell Siggi. In a moment of rage, he murdered a man. The act, though partly the result of adverse circumstances, led to his banishment from his homeland, cut off from his people and the rich lands he once ruled. However, his divine blood urged him not to give up, and, in his exile, he sought refuge in distant lands. There, he founded a new royal line, creating a kingdom that, though new, was destined for greatness. With the passing of generations, a remarkable descendant emerged from Siggi's line, Volsung. Born under a mystical omen, Volsung was said to have sprung from the sacred Yggdrasil tree, the world tree that connects all kingdoms. To commemorate his connection to this tree, Volsung erected a majestic hall around an impressive tree, which was christened the family tree, to serve as a constant reminder of his roots and the divinity that ran through his veins. The Volsung kingdom prospered and, in time, had many children. 2 of them stood out, a daughter, Signy, whose beauty was rivaled only by her steely spirit, and a son, Sigmund, brave and bold, the bearer of Volsung's hopes and dreams. Fate, however, has curious ways of weaving its threads. Sini was betrothed in marriage to Siggeir, a king of neighboring lands. Although this union promised a powerful alliance, Sini's heart was not in the betrothal. Reluctantly, she accepted for the sake of her family and her kingdom. But Siggeir's true intentions were soon revealed. Wounded in his pride by what he perceived as slights from Sini's family, he plotted his revenge. At a banquet under the guise of celebrating the union, he betrayed the Volsungs. Volsung was killed and his sons captured. Sigmund, with the secret help of his sister Sini, managed to escape from the clutches of King Siggeir. In the dark shelter of the forest, brother and sister, united by grief and betrayal, plotted how to avenge their family's downfall and restore their honor. As the shadows of the forest listened, the 2 vowed that vengeance would fall upon Siggeir and that the Volsung name would once again be synonymous with honor and power throughout the northern lands. The jungles and mountains sheltered Sigmund during his time of hiding. The memory of betrayal and the loss of his family was a constant companion fueling his spirit. But beyond the betrayal and pain, fate once again had another game for him. One day, as he stood in his father's now desolate living room, he saw something unusual. A sword, magnificently forged and gleaming even in the gloom of the hall, was nailed to the trunk of the family tree. The tree that once symbolized the glory and legacy of the Volsungs now appeared to be a tomb, but the sword was a promise of hope. Legend has it that no man, no matter how strong, had ever been able to move the sword one iota. There were rumors, whispers, that spread like the wind through the forest, that said that the sword had been thrust by Odin himself, the father of all, and that only the true heir of the Volsungs would be able to extract it. Defying the legend and with the weight of his destiny upon him, Sigmund approached the tree. With a firm grip, and with all the strength and determination of his lineage, he made an attempt to extract the sword. With a resounding sound that resembled a victory song, the sword yielded to his touch and broke free from the trunk, glowing with an almost divine light. This sword became not only Sigmund's most prized weapon, but also a symbol of Volsung lineage and endurance. With it in hand, he was ready to face any adversity and reclaim what had been taken from him. Sigmund's epic was far from over, and the sword would be a witness and companion to his future triumphs and tragedies. But at that moment, in his father's parlor, Sigmund extracted not only a weapon, but also a legacy and a destiny that would resonate through the ages. After retrieving the sword, Sigmund sought to re-establish his legacy. He traveled the lands, fighting those who stood in his way and restoring the greatness of the Volsungs. Though blessed with strength and cunning, he could not forever escape the tragic fate that often befalls the heroes of Norse legends. During one of his many confrontations, Sigmund found himself fighting a masked adversary of supernatural abilities. When their swords clashed, Sigmund's sword shattered into pieces, and he knew at that moment that his opponent was none other than Odin, who had come to reclaim the life he had once favored. Mortally wounded, Sigmund was carried from the battlefield by his wife, who was expecting a child. In his last moments, Sigmund spoke to his wife about the future, predicting that their son would be even greater than himself, and that he should name him Sigurd. He gave her the fragments of the sword and asked her to give them to his son when he grew up, so that the sword could be reforged and used to fulfill his destiny. After Sigmund's death, Hiordis, his pregnant wife, was found and rescued by King Alf, who took her into his kingdom. There, in the safety of the royal palace, Sigurd was born. But the young boy was not raised in the comfort of the court, but by Regan, an enigmatic blacksmith with a dark past and secrets he jealously hid. Regan, the blacksmith who educated Sigurd, was not only a master blacksmith, but also a skilled storyteller. One night, in the warmth of the forge flames, Regan shared with Sigurd the story of his family, a tale as dark as the shadows that danced on the walls of the workshop. Long ago, Regan's father, Hreidmar, was a powerful sorcerer who possessed a treasure coveted by many, the gold of the Andvari dwarf. This gold was obtained treacherously when the god Loki, seeking to reward Hreidmar for a mistake, stole the treasure from the Andvari dwarf, including a magic ring called Andvaranaut. Little did Loki know that, in stealing the ring, he also took a curse. Andvari had cursed the gold, claiming that it would bring misfortune to whoever possessed it. Hreidmar, upon receiving the cursed treasure, was seduced by its radiance and by the power of the ring. However, the curse soon manifested itself. Fafnir and Regan, brothers and sons of Hreidmar, also coveted the treasure. In an act of treachery and greed, Fafnir murdered his own father to claim the gold. But in doing so, the curse hit him harder. Greed consumed Fafnir to such an extent that, fearing that others might steal from him, he transformed himself into a terrible dragon to guard the treasure day and night. Regan, on the other hand, escaped his brother's fate, but was consumed by the desire for revenge and the ambition to claim the treasure for himself. However, he knew he could not confront Fafnir directly. Therefore, when Sigurd came into his life, he saw in him the perfect opportunity to retrieve the Andvari gold and the cursed ring. Sigurd, brave and with his family's legacy in mind, accepted the challenge. With his father's sword, which Regan reforged after it broke in combat, Sigurd faced and defeated the monstrous Fafnir in an epic fight. After the battle, following Regan's advice, Sigurd bathed his body in the dragon's blood, which gave him an almost invulnerable skin, except for a small spot on his back where a linden leaf had landed. But the most extraordinary thing happened when, also following a tip, Sigurd tasted the dragon's heart. In doing so, he acquired the ability to understand the language of birds. The birds, with their high-pitched, crackling voices, warned Sigurd of the impending treachery of Regan, who planned to kill him in order to keep all the treasure for himself. With his new skills and wisdom, Sigurd prevented the treachery and killed Regan. With Fafnir's treasure and new adventures ahead, Sigurd, the dragon slayer, continued his journey, leaving behind the shadow of the dragon, but carrying with him a destiny that still had many challenges to offer. In his travels, Sigurd heard rumors of a beautiful maiden trapped in an eternal sleep, surrounded by a flaming wall. With his characteristic courage and guided by fate, he found the lonely mountain where Brunhild lay sleeping. Brunhild, who had once been a Valkyrie in Odin's service, had disobeyed the god and was punished for it. With determination, Sigurd pierced the ring of fire and woke Brunhild with a kiss. Upon awakening, their eyes met, and an immediate connection was established between them. They shared stories, laughter, and deep gazes, and in that brief span of time, they both fell madly in love. Promising to meet again and consummate their love, Sigurd left the mountain where Brunhild was imprisoned to continue their adventures and prepare for a future together. However, upon returning to the mortal world, he encountered the cunning Grimhild, mother of Gudrun, a powerful and manipulative woman with great magical abilities. Seeing in Sigurd a perfect son-in-law for her daughter Gudrun, Grimhild hatched a plan. Using an enchanted drink, she made Sigurd forget all memories of his love for Brunhild. Under the influence of this spell, Sigurd not only forgot Brunhild, but was irresistibly attracted to Gudrun. Shortly thereafter, the two were married, while Brunhild awaited the return of her beloved. For her part, Brunhild, unaware of the machinations that affected Sigurd, was persuaded to marry Gunnar, Gudrun's brother. Despite Gunnar's bravery, he could not break through the ring of fire that protected Brunhild. So, in a turn of events, he turned to Sigurd. Through a magical ruse, Sigurd took on the guise of Gunnar, pierced the ring of fire, and claimed Brunhild in his name. As time passed, dark secrets began to unravel. Upon discovering the truth behind the deception, Brunhild was flooded with a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, and pain. The pure and genuine love she once felt for Sigurd was overshadowed by feelings of revenge and deeply wounded pride. In this climate of intrigue and tension, Brunhild hatched a plan to have Sigurd killed, an action that was executed by Gunnar and his other brother, Hogni. With Sigurd dead, Brunhild's grief was overwhelming. Despite her anger and previous actions, the love she harbored for Sigurd had never disappeared. Consumed by guilt and agony, Brunhild, in a final act of love and remorse, decided to join Sigurd in death, taking her own life with a sword. Thus, two lovers, separated by deceit and betrayal, but united in death, found eternal rest. Gudrun's heart was torn apart by the death of her husband Sigurd. Her soul was plunged into an abyss of grief and thirst for revenge. Although Sigurd had been betrayed by her own family, Gudrun could not forget her love for him, and her rage was directed at those she held responsible for his tragic death. In an act of cold and calculated revenge, Gudrun killed the children with Gunnar as punishment for her family's role in Sigurd's death. In a macabre and grim manner, she constructed a goblet from the skulls of her sons and filled it with their blood mixed with mead. Then, at a sinister banquet, he presented the cup to Gunnar and Hogni, making them drink from it, later revealing the truth of its contents. The horror of the revelation unleashed a spiral of revenge and violence in the court. Tensions that had been simmering for years finally erupted into a frenzy of betrayal and murder. Hogni was murdered in retaliation, and Gunnar, filled with rage and guilt, met his fatal fate at the hands of Atli, Gudrun's second husband and Brunhild's brother, who threw him into a pit full of snakes. With her life in ruins and her soul consumed by grief and revenge, Gudrun could no longer bear the reality around her. Seeking an end to her torment, she walked to the shore. There, gazing at the waves of the sea, she thought of Sigurd and the happier times they shared. With one last look at the world she was leaving behind, Gudrun stepped into the water, letting the waves envelop her and take her into the depths. Seeking to join Sigurd in the afterlife, or simply find peace in the silence of the abyss. Everyone blames Loki for the Ragnarok, but have you ever stopped to think that maybe Loki was just a victim of Odin's ambition? There are many factors that influenced the Ragnarok prophecy, but Odin, the god of wisdom, the father of all, was the main factor, and in this video, you will know why Odin was the real responsible. The Ragnarok prophecies describe several signs that will mark the beginning of the end of the world. These include the rise of conflict and disorder in the world, the death of Baldur, and the cold winter of Fimbulvetter, among others. The prophecy predicts that Ragnarok will culminate in an apocalyptic battle where many Norse gods will clash and fall. Each one of them has a marked destiny, such as Odin being devoured by the wolf Fenrir, Thor fighting against the serpent Jormungandr and dying, and Surtur killing Freyr. After this, the world would be consumed by fire and submerged in water, leading to its destruction. However, not everything ends with Ragnarok, as the world will rise again, renewed and fertile, and some gods will survive, while others will be reborn. Odin, known as the father of all, is the god of war, wisdom, poetry, and magic. Unlike other warrior gods, Odin is associated not only with the brutal aspects of battle, but also with strategy and cunning thought. He is revered for his wisdom and quest for knowledge, although it was this obsession with wisdom that marked the beginning of the end, which brings us to the first point. Odin was obsessed with increasing his wisdom and knowledge. Always concerned about the fate of the gods and the world, he constantly sought ways to gain information about the future and anything that might threaten his reign and that of the Aesir. One of the most famous sources of knowledge was the Well of Mimir. It was said that whoever drank from its waters would gain unparalleled knowledge and understanding, but the price for drinking from the waters was high. Mimir demanded Odin's right eye as payment. Odin accepted the price and sacrificed his eye. Through this sacrifice, Odin gained knowledge about many hidden mysteries and also became aware of the fate of the gods, Ragnarok. Another crucial moment in his quest for knowledge is when he acquires the runes, magical symbols that contain deep and secret powers. It is said that Odin hung on Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 nights, wounded by his own spear, as a sacrifice to himself. At the end of this suffering, the runes were revealed to him. This knowledge expanded his wisdom and also strengthened his ability to influence events and destinies. With all this power, knowledge, and wisdom, he began to prepare for the impending Ragnarok, including the gathering of fallen warriors in Valhalla. The paradox in Odin's quest for knowledge is that the more he learned about Ragnarok and the more he tried to prepare for and possibly prevent it, the more he seemed to be contributing to its coming. Odin had already contributed to the rivalry between the Jotuns and the Aesir before the vision, as for example when he slaughtered all the Jotuns, with the exception of one who managed to escape and prosper in Jotunheim. In several stories, he employs deception to overcome the giants, either to obtain magical artifacts, knowledge, or to eliminate a perceived threat. These acts fueled resentment between the giants and the gods, creating rivalry, hostility, and distrust. One of the most important figures in the relationship between Odin and the giants is Loki, who is himself a giant and yet lives among the gods. Odin's actions towards Loki and his descendants, the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jormungandr, and Hel, are especially important for the contribution to Ragnarok. In the prophecy, it was said that a giant and ferocious wolf, a snake so big that it could go around the world and bite its own tail, and a woman who was half dead and half alive, would be the main factors for the Ragnarok. So Odin thought that these were the sons of Loki, so he decided to expel them. Hel was sent to the realm of the underworld, eventually becoming the queen. Although she does not actively participate in the battle, she was crucial in sending her army of the dead to the war. Jormungandr was expelled to the seas, but there he managed to grow more than ever to the point of surrounding all of Midgard. And Fenrir, at the time a puppy, was adopted by the gods and cared for by Tyr to try to control it. but the wolf grew at an alarming rate, so Odin fearfully ordered Tyr to chain the beast, which led to the loss of Tyr's arm and the growth of hatred towards the gods. With that in mind, it is easy to understand why later the Jotuns and the sons of Loki joined together to kill all the gods.
Oh, now I see. Now I get it. Now the pieces are falling into place.
But despite the banishment of his sons, Loki had another motive to rebel against the gods. Baldur was Odin's most beloved son, known for his beauty and kindness. The prophecy foretold Baldur's untimely death, which would trigger Ragnarok. In an attempt to avoid this prophecy, Odin and his wife Frigg took measures to protect Baldur. They traveled the world, making every object, animal, plant, creature, or weapon swear not to harm Baldur. However, he forgot to make the mistletoe swear. With Baldur invulnerable, the gods began a game where they threw objects at him to see how they bounced harmlessly off him.
It's a good idea, right? It's a good idea.
Loki, jealous of Baldur, and perhaps resentful of the cruel banishment of his sons, discovered the secret to killing him. He created a mistletoe arrow and tricked Hoder, Baldur's blind brother, into shooting it during the game, fatally striking the god. His death was seen as one of the first signs of the impending Ragnarok. After Baldur was killed by Loki's trickery, Odin decided to punish him by taking him to a cave and binding him with the entrails of one of his sons. The rope made from the entrails was transformed into iron chains. As if that were not enough, a poisonous snake was placed on Loki in such a way that the poison constantly fell on his face. Sigyn, Loki's wife, stood by his side, holding a bowl over him to catch the poison. But when she had to empty the bowl, the poison fell on him, and he was overcome. Every time a drop of poison fell on Loki, he contorted his body in pain, making the earth itself tremble, creating what humans know as earthquakes. Loki's punishment extended until Ragnarok, when he would break free of his chains and, sure enough, lead the enemies of the gods in the final battle against the Aesir. Which leads me to this conclusion. If Odin did not want to have all the knowledge of the universe, if he did not try to prevent Ragnarok at all costs, maybe he would have a chance to survive. Maybe he was destined to do all this. But without a doubt, Odin was the one who triggered in a more or less active way the events of Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the catastrophic destruction of the cosmos and everything in it, including the gods. For the Vikings, the myth of Ragnarok was a prophecy of what would come at an unknown and indeterminate future moment. The word Ragnarok comes from the Old Norse Ragnarok, fate of the gods, twilight of the gods. There are two versions of the Ragnarok myth. In one of them, it is the ultimate end of the cosmos, and it is not followed by any rebirth in the other, as we will see below if there is one. Do you know what is worse than the end of the world? Worse than the apocalypse? Worse than the end of time? Well, most of those who have seen my videos have not subscribed. It's free. You just have to hit the subscribe button and that's it. New content every week. And now we begin. Someday, when the Norns, weavers of fate, have decided, there will come a great Fimbulwinter like no other the world has yet seen. Biting winds will blow snow from all directions, and the sun's heat will fail, plunging the land into cold like never before. This winter will last for 3 normal winters, with no summers in between. Mankind will become so desperate for food and other necessities of life that all laws and morality will collapse, leaving only the fight for survival. It will be an age of swords and axes. Brother will kill brother, father will kill son, and son will kill father. The wolves Skoll and Hati, who have hunted the sun and moon across the skies since the dawn of time, will finally catch up with their prey. The stars will also disappear, leaving nothing but a black void in the heavens. Yggdrasil, the great tree that holds the cosmos together, will shake, and all the trees and even the mountains will fall to the ground. The chain that has been holding the monstrous wolf Fenrir will be broken, and the beast will run free. Jormungandr, the mighty serpent that lives at the bottom of the ocean and encircles the land, will rise from the depths, spilling the seas over the entire land. These convulsions will rock the Naglfar ship and free it from its moorings. This ship, which is made from the fingernails and toenails of dead men and women, will sail easily over the flooded land. Your crew will be an army of giants, the forces of chaos and destruction, and its captain will be none other than Loki, the traitor of the gods, who will have freed himself from the chains with which the gods have bound him. Fenrir, with fire burning in his eyes and nostrils, will run across the land, with his lower jaw on the ground and his upper jaw against the top of the sky, devouring everything in his path. Jormungand will spit its venom all over the world, poisoning land, water, and air alike. The dome of heaven will split, and from the rift will emerge the fire giants of Muspelheim. His leader will be Surt, with a flaming sword brighter than the sun in his hand. As they march across Bifrost, the rainbow bridge to Asgard, the home of the gods, the bridge will break and fall behind them. An ominous horn blast will sound. This will be Heimdall, the divine sentinel, blowing the Jallarhorn to announce the arrival of the moment the gods have feared. Odin will eagerly consult the head of Mimir, the wisest of all beings, for advice. The gods will decide to go to battle, even knowing what the prophecies have predicted about the outcome of this confrontation. They will arm themselves and face their enemies on a battlefield called Vigrid, known as the battle plain. Odin will fight Fenrir, and at his side will be the Einherjar, the host of his chosen human warriors whom he has kept in Valhalla for just this moment. Odin and the champions of men will fight braver than anyone has ever fought before, but it won't be enough. Fenrir will swallow Odin and his men. Then one of Odin's sons, Vidar, burning with rage, will charge the beast to avenge his father. On one of his feet will be the shoe that has been crafted for this very purpose. It has been made from all the scraps of leather that human shoemakers have ever thrown away, and with it, Vidar will keep the monster's mouth open. He will then plunge his sword into the wolf's throat, killing it. Another wolf, Garm, and the god Tyr will kill each other. Heimdall and Loki will do the same, putting an end to the trickster's treachery, but costing the gods the best of themselves in the process. The god Freyr and the giant Surt will also be the end of each other. Thor and Jormungand, those old enemies, will finally get a chance to kill each other. Thor will be able to knock down the great serpent with blows from his hammer, but the snake will have covered him with so much poison that he won't be able to stand on his feet much longer. He will take 9 steps before dropping dead and adding his blood to the already saturated ground. Then the remains of the world will sink into the sea, and nothing will remain but the void. Creation and everything that has happened since then will be completely undone, as if it never happened. Some say that's the end of the tale, and of all tales for that matter. But others hold that a new, green, and beautiful world will rise from the waters. Vidar and some other gods, Vali, Baldur, Hodur, and Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, will survive the fall of the old world and live happily in the new. A man and a woman, Leif and Lifthrasir, will have hidden from the cataclysm in a place called the Forest of Hodmimir, and now they will come out and populate the lush land where they will find themselves. A new sun, son of the previous one, will rise in the sky, and all this will be presided over by a new, all-powerful ruler. Remember that this video comes out thanks to your comments and suggesting me topics, so don't be shy and join this community contributing ideas. I would also love to know what you thought of this content, and if you want more stories like this, or if you prefer me to focus more on mythologies from other regions.